Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight, bless these deliberations that we do the good of the city. We ask that you especially bless all of our military personnel here and abroad and their families. Bless all of our police and fire as they protect our city. And we ask your blessings on all of us present. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. As I look around, we're all here tonight, and Gary Gelser is attending by telephone. Gary, are you there?
It's a great day at the brand new Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott. This is Matthew. How may I help you?
Yes, he is. Gary? Hello, hello.
Hello?
You want to check?
Hi, this is Matthew. Hello?
Eddie said it might take a minute to get through to him.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me all right? Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Can I have room 304?
Oh, okay. What's the last name on the room?
Gelsner?
Okay, sure. 1 second here.
Hi, it's Gary.
Councilman Gelsner, you're going to be, if you could just say hello as soon as you can.
Hello, I'm here. Is the video feed on yet?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, hang on. Eddie, help me. I'm on the agenda page. Where do I find the video feed?
Gary, you may not want, Councilmember Gelser, you may not want to watch the video because there's a time delay.
Oh, but then how would I see the exhibits?
Well, you can turn it on. Just be careful when you speak.
Oh, I have the sound muted.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I'm here. Thank you.
Welcome, Gary. All right. Tonight there are no expenditures to ratify. And on communications, we have 2 communications tonight. So let's start with Fire Chief Mark Gaylord.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Tonight we'd like to provide you a short overview of the September 11th memorial from yesterday. And the memorial is the 3rd anniversary, I should say the 3rd memorial of this type. This event's put on by the United Goodyear firefighters, and this year 4 individuals were very instrumental in putting that on. Oscar Navarro, firefighter, and also firefighter Anthony Martin, Captain Craig Artrip, and Captain Darren Green, who is here with us, and he'll provide you a little bit of information about the overall event as well. I thought it might be interesting to you all to see perhaps a few historical pictures from September 11, 2001 that didn't make the national media. This is our own EOC on that day after we opened it up, and various staff members and elected officials who all were gathered that day to try to make a sense of what was going on and evaluate the threat to the city of Goodyear. As we move forward in the events of yesterday here locally, what I'll do is I'll share with you some of the photographs. I think they say a lot more than I would be able to about the event itself. And as these are kind of scrolling through, Captain Green will provide you with some additional information.
Madam Mayor, members of council. This event was actually a very huge success for us this year. We had approximately 750 people in attendance throughout the morning. This event was possible because of the contributions of our sponsors within our community, who graciously donated all the food and also provided some of the displays. I would really like to recommend the following groups: Hickman's Family Farms, Starbucks, the Wigwam Resort, Fry's Food and Drug, Sugar and Spice Tea and Coffee, the Hilgers Dental Group, Blue Air Force Base, Shamrock Foods, LA Specialty Foods, the Desert Edge High School Wrestling Team, and Halo 151. Without these sponsors, we could not have pulled this off. We had the Wigwam help us prep the food. They came in at 4:30 that morning and helped us get everything ready for the the rush of, we knew it was going to be a big crowd because of the 10th anniversary, and because of their professionalism and their ability to put on large banquets and things like that, really helped us out. Once we finished up the breakfast and went through that, we donated all the food to the New Life Shelter, anything that was left, both cooked and uncooked. Through the donations, we raised over $4,600 that day by the donations from the community, the raffle, and t-shirt sales. All these donations will go to our charities group, which stays here locally. We work very hard to help those in need here within our own community. We look forward to continuing to support these needs, and some of the recipients over the last year have been the New Life Shelter, both in sweat equity with us remodeling their casita and giving cash donations, the Homeless Youth Connection, the Arizona Burn Camp, MDA, United Way, and a Christmas food drive. In the near future, we really hope to continue this and also be able to provide some local scholarships to some of our youth in need here. But that's where this event was huge because of our public and because of our community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I would just add, as we, I've got one more slide, I really wanted to give acknowledgement to, if I could have the last slide. Our firefighters worked very hard at putting the event on. We received tremendous support from Goodyear Public Works and Goodyear Parks and Rec. The place looked great. The parks and grounds surrounding the station was just phenomenal, and there was a lot of hard work that went in, so we appreciate those departments and their teams for assisting us. And just generally, my observation was I felt a real strong sense of community yesterday at the meeting and at the event, and it was just kind of nice to be there and be a part of that. So thank you. If you have any questions for either one of us, we're done with the presentation.
Thank you. Would the council members like to comment that attended?
I attended with my family, and I was very impressed. I think you did a service to all the victims. Thank you so much, and it was really great to see there was a lot of the next generation that wasn't alive 10 years ago, and I think it was a learning experience, and thank you for all your service.
Very nicely said. I would have to agree with that, and enjoyed the camaraderie of everyone being there. It was a very uplifting, good feeling event. Thank you.
No, I also thought you did a very good job. I was there, and actually I was pleasantly surprised at the turnout, 750. Seemed actually more than that from the count, but there's a lot of people. Good event, well prepared. So yeah, great job, guys.
Well, we have the best fire department in the West Valley and in the Phoenix area, and it's wonderful the community support that you do for us. Thank you so very much.
Of course, I'm going to echo what a great fire department we have, but I think it was a great event for us as we commemorated and remembered the events of 9/11, but also took an opportunity then to bring everybody together. The additional, I want to say games, but the displays and the things that really got everybody involved. I thought it was great. It was a change of venue for us, I think, this year for the first time, and I know that was probably filled with a little bit of angst, but I think the additional parking and the additional space at Fire Station 3 was well utilized. So great job to everybody.
I also echo that. I think that location was so much better. First of all, the sun was in a different direction, and so you could get more people actually observing the event. I thought the idea that the park was open and that you had all those venues surrounding that, so people sort of made more of a day of it. They stayed there longer. I thought the ceremony was extremely respectful, and I thought the flag raising was outstanding. There wasn't. It was hard not to have a tear roll down your cheek. It was very emotional, and I think we ought to give them a good round of applause for this. And thank you for all the, we need to be sure we thank the sponsorships for that, because they couldn't have done all that without them. And all the workers you had, all the volunteer workers that were there. We thank you all. Next on communication is an update on the city manager's investment portfolio by Larry Lang, Finance Director.
I don't think that's on my investment portfolio.
Oh, did I say that? Oh, well.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually,
I'm sorry, I said manager, didn't I, rather than managed? Well, I'll correct that right now.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. Actually, I think the City Manager would want to take credit for this because I think I'm going to talk a little bit about some good news.
So that wasn't such a bad error then, is that what you're saying?
No, it wasn't. I think it's always nice to hold him up there. Just a little brief history on Goodyear's investment program. Goodyear over the years has invested its money through the Arizona State Treasurer's Office in what's called the Local Government Investment Pool. About a year ago, the City Council approved its first investment policy, allowing investments to be taking place where we can manage our investments ourselves. This allows us to better manage the cash flow on this. The LGIP does a great job, but it's more like a money market account. It's very current stuff, and this allows us to manage a little bit better. In November, as we discussed it with the City Council, we said we would bring back quarterly updates. And this is the first of those. It's been on the agenda. It was on the agenda in July, and a couple other items came up. It was on in August, and they came up. What I'm going to go through tonight is exactly the slides you had back for the July presentation. I haven't changed anything. Next month we're going to have the next quarter, but we thought it's real important to kind of show you what it's going to look like so that if you want the information any different, you're able to get that. First, how do we have our funds invested? As of June 30th, and that's what this report is. This is as of June 30th. Our managed investments, the ones that we've gone into are the ones shown in green, represent about 41% of our entire portfolio. At that time, we still had about 57% of our portfolio with the State Treasurer's Office. Those two wedges have about flipped in size since then. The sources of it that we show, we thought we would show where that money belongs by fund, with 38% of it in the general fund and about 43% of it in impact communities. What is in the portfolio as of June 30th? U.S. Treasuries make up 65% of our managed portfolio. Federal agencies, or non-callable bonds, make up the remaining 34% of our funds. And overall characteristics of the portfolio, at the time it was AAA rating. I'm not going to go much into that issue, but we are in compliance today because these are expressly allowed by Arizona state law. The yield, 0.49%, in other words, 49 basis points. Just as a frame of reference, the LGIP for that month of June was 0.13. And we'll show you a slide on that in just a little bit. Our portfolio duration at that point in time was about 1.57 years. Our benchmark's about 1.8. So we'd like it to be a little longer, but with rates the way they are today, it didn't make sense. And even today, we're not up quite to that standard. So one benchmark we established when we established this was, how does it compare to our prior investments? And you can see the portfolio yield was 0.49%. Our manager we pay them a fee of 0.09%. So the net yield is 0.40% compared to the LGIP pool. In other words, we're netting 3 times what we were in the LGIP just by managing it a little closer.
That's great.
There will be a test on this at the end. These are the securities, the very specific securities as of June 30th that we are invested in, and their maturities, and you can see that the overall duration is an average of 1.57 with a yield at 0.49%. I wanted to give you this chart, and I'm going to read what we had in the notes for a presentation in July, which said the 2-year U.S. Treasury yield ended the month at 0.46%, 13 basis points higher than the previous week's all-time low of 0.33%. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, The 2-year Treasury was 0.217%, so it has dropped well below those all-time lows that you saw a little bit. Also, we had in our notes, this was fueled by the successful passage of austerity measures in Greece, and I'm going to leave the rest of that subject alone. As you know, a lot has changed over the last 2 months, and yet not a lot has changed. Interest rates are real low, they're continuing low, and that is why it is so important that we keep our portfolio managed as close as we can, because anymore, when you're starting to talk 20 and 30 basis points, that is virtually all of our interest income at this point in time. So the next step is we'll continue as we have been, and we'll provide a report back to the City Council for the first quarter in October. If it may make sense that we'll just provide a similar report in writing if we can't get to do it in person, but we wanted to make sure we got you information. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Questions? Not even for you, Joe? Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Now is the time for the citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda item. Again, non-agenda item. The Council will listen to your comments, may take any one of the following. They may respond to criticism, they may request the staff investigation and report on the matter, or they may request that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. Do we have some cards?
Two. The first one is Roy Azarillo.
And if I may just take a moment. Come on, Mr. Roy. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. I just wanted to remind everybody the yellow light and the buzzer will let you know that you have 30 seconds left to speak. Before you begin to speak, identify yourself clearly by stating for the record your name and address.
Is this set okay? I need to pull it toward me. Okay. My name is Roy Azzarello. I live at 15471 West Amelia Drive here in Goodyear. And I just want to say, Mayor Lord, I hope you had a good summer. It's good seeing you again. And the other members of the City Council, it's good to be in your presence as well. I will be brief. Several months ago, I wrote a letter to the editor of the West Valley View expressing my interest in seeing art, mural work, or decorative painting such as is common in the East Valley appear on overpasses along Interstate 10 here in Goodyear. I've never seen decorative art along freeways anywhere in the West Valley, and I think, why not? I think that type of painting is very nice and done in pastel colors, would highlight and complement our desert landscape. Goodyear can be a pioneer in bringing freeway decorative artwork to the West Valley. I believe it would enhance our image as a cultural center, and I do not believe that even in these hard economic times that the cost would be prohibitive. Therefore, I'm requesting that the Goodyear City Council formally study and consider the possibility of implementing my suggestion at an appropriate future time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Gary Gibbs.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Gary Gibbs, 17562 West Polaris Drive, Estrella, in Goodyear. I'm going to read these remarks because, well, frankly, it's just easier, so forgive me. At the August 23rd City Council meeting, you passed a resolution expressing opposition to expansion of Perryville Prison. But prior to taking that action, internal city documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request would lead a reasonable person to believe that the city only decided to publicly oppose expansion after a heated and vocal public hearing at a local high school. Prior to that, these documents show that the city was sending signals that it would not take a strong position in opposition. As early as May, the private prison company GEO asked the Arizona Department of Corrections for additional time to present a proposal so it could determine if Goodyear would oppose its plans. After all, why go to the time, trouble, and expense of putting together a dog and pony show for the Department of Corrections if the city was dead set against it. It would seem that had such a strong position as been taken now had been taken then, GO may never have submitted a proposal to expand the prison in Goodyear. But no opposition was voiced. GO was not discouraged. Rather, internal city documents show that Goodyear officials wanted to know if the plans would adversely affect Luke Air Force Base operations. They won't, and Luke is on record as not opposing prison expansion. The city also asked GO for some talking points on the benefits to the city of a larger Perryville. In the end, GO went ahead, laid out its plans at an August 10th public hearing, and that, by the way, was a hearing no one from official Goodyear was at. Simply put, what I would like to know is why the city didn't immediately voice strong opposition when, as early as May, it knew that Perryville was a target for prison expansion. Had you done that, it's reasonable to ask, couldn't this entire mess have been avoided? Thank you.
Thank you. Would the council like to address, since this was criticism?
I get a question for the city attorney. Was there any, first of all, to address Mr. Gibbs' comment, to let you know, as far as the prison is concerned, staff has known my position on this since day one. It's never been for this prison. So I'm going on the record for that, number one. Number two, have you had any meetings with this prison prior and any conversations with the actual Department of Corrections director?
Mayor, members of the council, just briefly, as council is aware, we did meet with the Department of Corrections Director Ryan in April of 2010 and certainly expressed the city's position against Perryville expansion. Given the open meeting law limitations this evening, we can't go into a lengthy discussion, but to answer your question directly, yes, the legal staff met with the EOC in April 2010.
Well, just as a follow-up again to Mr. Gibbs, you are aware of our conversation and my position as it relates to this prison, and was I ever suggesting that this be a viable option? Me, personally.
I'm not sure I can answer that question. Can you say it again?
All right. With our conversations, have I ever suggested that expanding Perryville prison was a good thing?
Assuming we're waiving attorney-client privilege at this point,
Yes.
you and I, no, you have not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council person like to make a comment?
I'd be happy to make a comment. Quite frankly, the only time with an executive session, so we obviously can't go into it, would have been that April 2010 time frame, and you already stated what occurred from that. Until I was in Tennessee the end of July, did emails start coming to us that this was even starting to come to fruition, that we were going to have to take a stance, which we did. And I don't, quite frankly, know, well, I should say it's unfortunate that the amount of time and voice that personally myself I have taken to try to stop this, I'm not sure what else we can do at this point. And all I can state to the citizens of Goodyear is please continue to show your opposition if that's what you feel, letting them know where we stand, because we've had the business community behind us, we've had organizations behind us, we've had other cities behind us, we've had this entire council stating how we feel, we've had residents behind us. If somebody has another idea, I'd be certainly happy to hear it. But I think that it's been very clear that this city has been against it. And I find it very unfortunate that conspiracy theories continue to be stated out there, because in my opinion, it's not true.
Madam Mayor, may I speak? One thing people know about me is that I'm an attorney, and someone misstates the facts, I'm going to call them on you. That is not true. I think it's been stated. We had executive session. What came out, what was discussed with the prison, with the attorney, you stated you discussed that. There was never anything that said the council was for it, and I know dang well there was never anything that I said was for it. And I find it interesting, statements are made public records. Well, I'd like to see the email out there that says I was for it, because I never was, I never have been, and I never will be. And that is the black and white truth. And I don't like it when people come up here and try to mislead. That's just simply wrong, and it's just not the right thing. To say it's a dog and pony show because we have held beliefs. You know, I work with the criminal justice system. If anybody thinks I said I was for a prison, they better go back and look at their notes, and they better bring that specific email that says I was for it. If not, you better be careful what you say, because, you know, that's just the wrong thing. I don't like the conspiracy theories. I think it's sad. I think our community is all on the same page and united. And in order to score some sort of political points out there to make these statements is just wrong. No one has been for this prison. I don't know of anyone at any meeting who has said anything's for this prison, and I have seen no records that said anyone from this city supports this prison. So I'm a little angry about this because, you know, it's just not it. We're very clear, and if you go back and listen to the record, what I stated about the prison, I gave my statements, and I think if I can waive attorney-client privilege, I think that's kind of what I said before, if that's correct, City Attorney.
Wally?
Well, I just wanted to say I wasn't on council in 2010, so I'm not privy to the executive session. However, the RFP was already put out by the Department of Corrections. So their public meeting was a requirement that they had to have public input. It would not have made any difference if we would have been there, because quite frankly, if I was there, I would not have spoken, because this council had not taken a position on it that I had voted on it, and I was not going to be accused of violating the open meeting law. I am against the prison. I have been against the prison. I didn't know anything about the prison until I started receiving emails regarding the prison. And when that happened, I happened to be in Texas. And I just think the folks that are focusing on this are spending an awful lot of energy that they don't need to do. The city is opposed to this expansion. We are doing everything we can, but our city has nothing to do with the decision. It's going to be made by the Department of Corrections. And if the city and those folks that are adamantly opposed to it, please get your letters in, because that's going to weigh with however the decision is made. And that's all I can say.
Councilman Gilzer, do you have any comments?
Hi. No, I was actually away from the country, and I got many, many emails that said greetings, which people opposed to the prison. And I have led several tours of that prison, and every time I go there, I get nervous. So, no, I'm not in support of the prison at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Stiff?
You know, it's a shame that from a few documents we glean what we think to be the truth or what we want to be the truth. A lot can be read into or can be left out of reading printed documents. Mr. Gibbs, you're accusing the council and the city staff of supporting the prison in the beginning and now flip-flopping, and I think it's extremely unfortunate. The official public record is what we did on at our last meeting, plain and simple. And to try to turn this into something that it's not, and to spend the amount of time that we have had staff spend looking for something that just isn't there is a complete waste of city resources, and has been a waste of city resources. And I know, being the new member on council, obviously not being privy to any of it, being in town at the night of that meeting, and attending another meeting on behalf of the city. And Mr. Gibbs, you in particular have said I wouldn't have attended anyway. I take very much offense to that. And you don't know, and you're making assumptions that are absolutely incorrect. And I think for the betterment of our community, we need to stop making assumptions. We need to go on the fact, and the fact is this council and this city is absolutely opposed to the expansion of this prison.
Thank you. And as your mayor, I feel this was brought before us tonight for political purposes and political purposes only, along with many of these items that continue to come before this council, looking for something that this council has done wrong. That's why they're pulling the public records. That's their constitutional right, and I would never take that away from them. As your mayor, part of my job is to wait until I get what the public wants. You know, people talk about we want the government in our hands as citizens. Okay, I gave you that opportunity. I had no idea how the public felt until that public meeting. And we heard loud and clear, except those other people that are coming before us. We got a great number of letters and emails sent to us for people who wanted it. So you're not the only voice in this. You may think you're the only voice, but you're not. There are a number of voices out there. My job is to listen to those voices. In my heart, from the very beginning, and when this came up, I was not for expansion of the prison. But I had to handle myself in what I think is the proper way to do it. No, I did not attend that meeting. I was out of state. Had I been here, I would not have attended that meeting. That was your meeting. That was your meeting to tell us and tell the public what you wanted. Citizens have responsibilities too, and that was their responsibility. I feel that we were very proactive after that meeting. We went through every letter we got, no matter if it was for the prison or against the prison. We have contacted every entity you could possibly contact, expressing the desire to not have the expansion of this prison. We have gone up from the governor's office down. We have done everything possible. And please, when you ask for public records, you can read between the lines, you can add anything you want, and you can go on a blog and say anything you want. And it's not always true. So I object to some of this conversation that's taking place in our community. You have a good council here, you have a good staff. And a good staff would research GO to find out the finances of it and the job numbers and all of that. They don't know what the council's going to vote on. They don't know what the citizens are going to vote on. They need all the information to bring to us so we're all able to make the best decision. So I know this is going to continue, but I have to tell you, you are 100% wrong on this one. Thank you. Okay. Let's go to the consent agenda, please. And I'll ask the city clerk to read the consent agendas A through D, please.
Item A, approve draft minutes of a regular meeting held on August 22nd, 2011. Item B, approve the following new members to the Goodyear Centennial Committee for approximately 6 months through the state centennial celebration on February 14th, 2012. Charles D. Miller, Brittany McGee, and Eric Knapp. Item C, adopt Resolution 11-1445, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Goodyear and the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for city receipt of overtime reimbursement for participation in the Neighborhood Narcotics Enforcement Team. Item D, approve the amendments to the lease and license for the existing Estrella Mountain Antennae site located at 11101 South Estrella Parkway between the City of Goodyear and Crown Atlantic Company, LLC.
Thank you. Does anyone in the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Does anyone from the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I have a question.
Question? All right.
In the minutes, there's a typo.
I saw the number.
No, then there's two.
Yeah.
I don't know if it matters on the
Mine doesn't.
page 16. My comments, public safety.
It will be corrected before they're signed.
Okay. That was all I had.
Okay. Okay, since there's no consent agendas to be pulled, I would like to ask for a motion and a second on the consent agenda, please.
Mayor, I so move adoption of the consent calendar as read.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Campbell and a second by Councilwoman Loretano. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to the business section. On number A, we will now consider amending the city code, making it unlawful to allow animals, livestock, and fowl to run a large. There are two options for council to consider when adopting the resolution, Exhibit A or Exhibit B, and presentation by Joe Schmidt.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. What I'd like to do is kind of recap the issue for you and bring you where we've been and where we are tonight. You recall at the July 11 City Council meeting, staff presented to the council a proposed ordinance which would expand the current prohibition for dogs running at large to include other animals, including cattle. The proposed ordinance was prompted by complaints about cattle damaging farm crops and concerns about traffic safety due to a significant increase in the number of accidents involving motor vehicles and cattle in the Rainbow Valley area. And one of the attachments you have in your agenda tonight, as you have had in the past, is an exhibit showing the approximate locations where accidents have occurred and the dates of those accidents. The City Council postponed action on the proposed ordinance at that meeting due to objections from the ranchers who have large grazing leases in the Rainbow Valley area, as well as north and south of State Route 238 in the Mobile area. Likewise, you have this exhibit in your agenda packet, and also provided you larger versions of them before the meeting. While the adoption of the ordinance would not preclude grazing of cattle on leased lands, it would make it illegal for cattle to roam on other people's property and public roadways within the city limits. The ranchers have expressed their concern that passage of an ordinance would not solve the traffic safety issue and would prefer to work on providing better fencing to contain the cattle. During the weeks that followed, staff continued to have dialogue with both the farmers and the ranchers, and there have been some cooperative efforts to replace existing fencing that had fallen into disrepair and erect new fencing. The ordinance was reconsidered at the council meeting held on August 22nd, and action again was postponed in order to give the farmers and ranchers additional time to cooperatively address the situation. Council also directed staff to provide council with a risk assessment regarding an alternative that would have the proposed ordinance only apply to that portion of the city located north of Patterson Road, and I believe the city attorney has provided you with that information. Since the August 22nd meeting, additional meetings have been held with affected parties, including a meeting at which there was representation from the BLM, State Livestock Department, several state legislators, and a local congressional office. At that meeting, concerns were raised regarding the legality of the proposed ordinance and the effect it might have on federal grazing leases. It was suggested that before an ordinance is adopted, the cooperative efforts of the ranchers and farmers to address the issue by installing fences should be given a chance, and other measures should be pursued to address the traffic safety issue, including installation of additional warning signage, conducting a speed study to see if the speed limit should be lowered on Rainbow Valley Road, and installation of additional cattle guards at appropriate locations. To that end, the BLM has offered some of its resources by providing up to 3 miles of fence material to be used on its lands. Additional warning signage has already been ordered by city staff and recently arrived and will be installed at appropriate locations. The city staff also will be scheduling a speed study, which will include new traffic counts on Rainbow Valley Road and should take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. The proposed ordinance that is before the council tonight includes the revisions that had previously been suggested by the council and has further been revised to provide the council with an alternative that would have the ordinance provisions regarding cattle only apply to that portion of the city located north of Patterson Road. It should be noted that if the council desires to act on the proposed ordinance tonight, Resolution 11-1442 should be acted on first, and the motion to adopt should specify whether it includes Exhibit A, which would have the ordinance apply to the entire city, or Exhibit B, which would have the ordinance provisions related to cattle only apply to that portion of the city north of Patterson Road. Likewise, if Ordinance 11-1247 is then considered for adoption, the motion should specify whether it includes Exhibit A or Exhibit B. Lastly, I want to note that it is certainly the council's prerogative to consider modifying the proposed ordinance further or postpone action on the ordinance for further study or further revision. That concludes my introduction of the agenda item, and I understand that there are representatives present tonight on both sides of the issue who wish to make presentations to the mayor and council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now is the time for us to ask for the public comments. Do we have cards?
And I do have several.
All right.
Tim Pearson.
Vice Mayor, members of the council, my name is Tim Pearson.
Please
Mr.
speak
Pearson,
into
I know
the
it's
mic.
very difficult, but you need to go as close as you can to the microphone because you have a very soft voice and it's very difficult to hear.
My name is Tim Pearson. I'm here with Mr. DeRosier. My address is 3833 North 30th Street in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here opposing the fencing ordinance for any number of reasons. First, if I may show you a map that probably is not going to be very easily seen, but this is an outline of the map of Mr. DeRosier's great, thank you. Mr. DeRosier's allotment, that's called the Belote allotment. Belote allotment was originally established in 1938. The Belote allotment is outlined in the broken line, constitutes 200,000 acres. That sounds like a lot of acreage. Remember, it's leased land, it's not Dallas. And despite its size, the amount of the allotment only allows 500 cows to be to range on an entire area. The open range law, which is the law now, is that the range need not be fenced to keep animals off of property. That began in pre-statehood days. It has been established through federal law, 9 different statutes in Arizona law, and it's the way that the ranching has been done throughout the western United States. For a new landowner to come in and begin to farm, they have to be aware of what the law is when they come in, and that is that they need to fence their property off in order that cattle do not come in and graze on their land. That's been the law in Arizona for more than a century. The laws that are involved include Arizona's Enabling Act, which is federal law that when Arizona became a state. The Taylor Grazing Act does the same thing. The Federal Land Planning and Management Act does the same thing. We cannot have state law cannot preempt federal law, and a municipal ordinance cannot preempt state law. So it's our position from a legal standpoint that a fencing ordinance in here, which incidentally would cost about $17,000 a mile to fence, would completely run the ranchers out of Goodyear. And he'd be opting to run a business, a large business that's been here for forever, to opt for smaller farming areas. And I think that the council needs to take into account whether or not that set-off is appropriate, especially given the history of the ranch ordinance. I think I'm out of time.
No, I should have made this known before we started. We had decided to give both the ranchers and the farmers extra time this evening because we know how important this issue is to both sides. So you may continue if you'd like.
Thank you. I think that the farmers and the ranchers have been working together to try to accommodate their differences. And I know that Mr. DeRosier has made a proposal as much as 6 weeks ago to put up a fence if the farmer he was dealing with would take down the old fence, which has been there for years. That a lot of this farming land hasn't been farmed for 20 years.
I'm sorry, did you say 20 years?
20 years.
20 years.
And it's been ranched since 1938, like I say. The DeRosier family acquired it in 1970. But I think if on balance, hopefully neither one has to be excluded from a part of the community's economic base. That's why when really there was an option C, and that is the one that the city manager mentioned, that is to put in more signage and take that alternative and see how that works in terms of stopping the risks that are on the driving, and that the speed limits be examined closely too. Anyway, that's my presentation. I think there several others have more specific information as to where the roads are. There's plenty of fencing that's already been put up here. It's not designated on here, but there's been quite a bit of fencing put up by ranchers just for their own containments. But it's not certainly 200,000 acres worth of fence.
Questions? Questions? Yes. Yeah, go ahead and ask.
I've got a question. We've got, 200,000 acres of land and how many cattle? 500.
Yeah.
And I guess, let me ask you this. What's driving the cattle to go over into the farmer's field? Are they looking for food or water?
Both.
Or both? All right. If you got 200,000 acres and 500 cattle, and that's a lot of grazeland, isn't there an area where you can either put the cattle that away from the road, put food out that would keep them from wandering into the farmer's field, or even possible, I don't know what the cost is, try to put some water or whatever so they're not going across the road, because I'm thinking 200,000 is a lot of acres, and you have 500 cattle to keep it so that it's staying off that road. And again, I don't claim to be a farmer. I don't claim to be a rancher, all right? But, I'm thinking of a lot of area, 500 cows, and they're going for water and food. There's got to be a way to kind of point them in a different direction if the lure is food and water. Just a thought. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it certainly does, Mr. Pizzillo. I can't tell you how many wells are out there, but the ranchers have spent a fortune putting in wells so that there is water available away from those areas being farmed. The reason that there are so few cattle allowed to graze on this 200,000 acres is so that that's about what is sufficient to feed them. They can't put on more than that because that isn't sufficient, and that's based on a lot of studies by the BLM. So there is water and there is food, and the water has been developed by the farmers at great expense.
I'm just thinking the way to kind of encourage them to go this way as opposed to the way that they're leading, on this farmer's land. And again, I don't claim to have the answers, but it seems to me that, I can appreciate your cost, but the problem I have with all of this is being able to control one's property so it doesn't damage another's. Okay, that's kind of where I'm kind of coming from on this thing. And it would be great if there's a way we can figure out a way to get those cattle pointing in a different direction or going for something that's away from the road. I think signage will help. I think there's some other things that you're going to hear tonight that may help to keep them from crossing that road or wandering onto that road. But still, there's got to be a way to keep them from going across and into others. So, I just throw that out. I don't know anything about farming. I don't know anything about ranching. But I'm hoping there's a way you can kind of get them in a different direction so they don't end up in the farmer's field. Just a thought.
Councilman, if
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gelser here. Could you ask the public speakers to step really close to the microphone?
Yes,
I'm having a little trouble hearing them.
I can
Thank you.
understand that, Councilman Gelser. He has a very soft voice, and I have asked that, and I'm not even sure at that point where you are you can hear him, but he's doing his very best.
Actually,
Well, I heard most of it, but it's real faint. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Actually, my children wouldn't say that I particularly.
Oh.
If you're out in the area where the ranching takes place, you'll notice that there are quite a few home sites, all of which have been fenced by the homeowners because that's what the expectation of the law is.
So if that's the case, tell me how many farms are there and how many of them have fenced in?
That I couldn't tell you.
Are there 3 farms in that area, or are there?
When I say farms, I'm talking about like home sites.
Oh, home sites. All right, not. Okay.
One other point is, as far as the fencing is concerned, I went out there on Saturday and took some pictures with my client. Lots and lots. There are probably more dove hunters than there are cattle, and those fences get cut. There's a granite or a gravel industry who has dumped gravel and all kinds of rocks on top of the fences. So, I mean, the ranchers try to keep up with maintaining their fences, but oftentimes that's just simply impossible. But again, that's if there aren't any more questions.
I had a question.
Yeah. Let me just ask you this one, because
Go
this
ahead.
has to do with the fence. I was given information that possibly by the end of the week, the fence, you will fence in an area and gather the livestock, locate them south of the new fence, where they have no access to Rainbow Valley Road and site of collisions.
I'm not aware of that. My client might, and perhaps Mr. Bray would know.
All right, well,
I'm not familiar with that.
All right.
My question is, does the cattlemen have wells? Do they have water, or is the only water on the farmer's land?
No, they have wells, drilled wells and stock tanks. There's water out in the grazing area.
Is it there for the cattle?
Yes.
And is there water there all the time so that they know to go there to drink?
Yes.
Okay.
As much as a cattle knows anything, cow knows anything.
Councilwoman Loretano?
Forgive me, I have a couple cow questions, so I'm not really quite sure. Do they basically, I don't know if it's free range, or they eat the natural vegetation, or do the farmers give them food?
No, they eat the natural vegetation. I believe in times of severe drought, they may supply. I don't know about these particular ranches, but I do know that food is supplied on occasion.
And then my other question is, if there's a fencing issue, is there a way just to kind of, because I've seen it with like elk crossings up north, where they kind of fence off a part, and for some reason the elk just go the other way, like towards Payson. Is there a way just to not fence in the whole property, but the areas they cross, if they cross separate areas? I don't know.
I don't know for sure, but that was discussed at a meeting last week, and another speaker may be able to speak to that better than I.
So we have other people that could address some of these questions that you're unable to. Okay. Any other for this time?
I'll wait for
Counsel-
the other speakers.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Michael DeRossier.
Madam Mayor, council members, good evening. My name is Mike DeRosier, 16825
Michael, you need to pull that up or
16825 West
Okay.
Yuma Road, Goodyear, Arizona. I am the rancher out in that area. First of all, to answer your questions you're talking about, there is a perimeter and external fence on the below allotment. I got to put my glasses on to see where we're at here.
Please have him speak into the microphone.
Yeah, can you, I tell you what,
Once I
if you
get this
pull it
going, I'll
out,
be
if you
ready.
want to, okay, thank you.
The Rainbow Valley Road that we're talking about. I got it, Joe. Thank you. Rainbow Valley Road we're talking about is 4.5 miles down. Your first cattle guard is at this location. This is section 2. There's a land transfer, microwave station. And we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4.5 miles. There's another cattle guard here. This is where the livestock had been hidden. Unfortunately, they were all Jimmy Roars at the time. There were some other cattle that weren't included in the below allotment. A farmer that was out there had 40 or 50 head that was actually homesteading in this area that got hit, but none of his were killed. To make a long story short, there is an interior fence inside of this area, and then obviously my external fence that blown. The area you're talking about where the livestock are getting on Mr. Shelton at this time is about 50 feet from one of the waters to his field, 50 feet. Our agreement was for him to remove that fence and I would rebuild it. That will be completed no later than Friday due to the lack of getting the fence removed. There are 22 dirt tanks that are filled by Mother Nature, and there's 15 wells. Yes, they all have water in them. To answer the questions you were asking before, is there anything else in that area?
So,
I have another question. Would you go back to, you're saying that the fence.
could you put your microphone down,
I
please?
am so sorry. You were, the fence area that you're talking about, what's the road the fence area is on? Is it on Riggs?
I'm not understanding.
Okay, you were just speaking how you have fencing all the way around. Are you specifically speaking about the Riggs Road fencing?
I think you were talking about perimeter. Is that what you were talking about, perimeter?
I was talking about interior fence and exterior fence. From Rainbow Valley Road, the fence is the farthest away is 1 mile to the west and 5 miles to the east.
I was out there Friday, and I did see a lot of your fencing, but it was down. Some was up, some was down. And that's what I'm trying to, I'm trying to visualize where I saw it on this map to your map.
Okay, and you were on Riggs Road?
Yes.
Okay, from Riggs and Rainbow Valley, where that is kind of depleted there?
Yes.
Yes, that is being rebuilt. And then you went probably a half a mile and went to the south?
Yes.
If you would have been out there today, that is all brand new.
Well, I didn't know to go out today. I'm sorry.
And who paid for that fence? Who put that fence up?
I am doing that.
And you are
Mike DeRosier.
a rancher?
Yes.
And the farmer cleared it for you? Is that the
I
area?
will mention that in a little later in my little note. We're behind because of that. It should have been completed 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one. I guess I just want to hear it. You have cattle.
Yes, sir.
They're roaming the.
Are you talking into the microphone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's on. They're roaming the area, and it's your position that it is everyone else's responsibility to protect themselves from the cattle. Is that correct?
To a certain extent. But let's face it, everyone needs to get along to make this thing work.
Correct.
No one can care. Just because I have the biggest yard doesn't mean I need to mow everyone's grass, so to speak. if I may use that term. That's
Okay.
probably not a good term, but yes. But for Brandon to watch all his stuff is totally impossible. For Tim Smith to watch all his stuff is impossible. Mr. Castile is a lot smaller farmer, so probably 120 acres is probably pretty easy for that gentleman to watch his fence.
So if the crux of, we've got two problems. One is we've got a public safety issue on the roadways. And the second problem is we've got your property entering someone else's property. Is that kind of the crux of this whole thing?
Yes, sir. Now, I believe that your safety factor on Rainbow Valley Road was taken care of at least a month ago when all the cattle were removed and driven at least 5 miles away to a different location on a pasture.
Okay. Did that cattle drive, if you will, did that get them any farther away from the connection to the farm field?
That is correct. They're totally impossible for them to get there at this time.
Okay. I'm going to hold on until we hear from everybody else then.
Councilman Lauritano?
If you could clarify, if they've been moved, two things. What's to stop them from coming back? And how is it totally impossible, if you could explain?
The livestock that were on Rainbow Valley Road were put in a pasture just to keep them from coming back to that location. To come back to that location. Now, like I mentioned, there still are cattle that can get inside the farms at the location I just mentioned earlier, which would be Hunt Highway, which is a mile south of Riggs Road at the location that this lady was looking at. That is correct. And where she saw that fence from Rainbow Valley Road a half a mile to the west or to the east, that is in bad shape. But we have driven posts there. The main concern is where the traffic area is for Mr. Smith's farm and get that taken care of. Until that is taken care of and that fence is completed, and it should be done, I hope, Wednesday or Thursday, but for sure Friday with gates and a complete finished product.
And then that should solve the problem. They won't be coming down. They won't be able to come down, is what you're telling me.
That is correct.
Okay.
So may I ask one other question? When I was there on Friday, I saw loose cattle on West Chandler Road. So is it belonging to someone else then? It's not your cattle?
I can't answer that question, but I would think they would probably be our livestock.
Yeah, they were just on the side of the road on West Chandler Heights.
I can't answer. I was out there, but I can't answer that question. I don't know what time you were out there, but
Oh, anywhere between 2 and 4 o'clock, I guess. 3 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock. I was out there a couple of hours, and they were on the side of the road, just this far from the road, just standing there.
I can't answer that question truthfully.
All right. Well, I'm worried about those cows.
I was in earlier. Yes,
you
I was
missed
in earlier
everybody
today.
else. If you moved them all, then you missed this group.
That could be possible. I know that there's some fences cut up at the end of Estrella Parkway on that end of the town, or in that end of the ranch as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Stipp?
Is Kyle Mohan, did I pronounce that correctly? Mohan?
Yes.
Is he working on your behalf?
Yes.
He contacted us over the weekend with a series of, this is what we're proposing to do. Are you familiar with that? And can we, I don't want to say take him at his word, but is he
Yes.
adequately representing your
Yes, that is
your
correct.
interests? So when he says we're going to have this done by the end of the week, and obviously there's conditions to that, moving cattle and a willingness to continue to work to achieve a reasonable solution to this, that's a fair representation of how you feel?
Yes, and I have that written down here as well, which I was going to present to you, but go right ahead. You're doing a good job.
I was going to say let her rip.
That's my first statement.
Okay. So if you want to keep going, then.
My first statement is the farm fence will be completed by the end of the week, which I mentioned earlier. The fence would be up at this time if Mr. Shelton had completed his part of the agreement with him and myself. Number two, as soon as the fence is complete, we will immediately begin to gather the livestock in that area, remove them south of that location, and we will locate livestock south to the new fence where they cannot get on the farm fields or Rainbow Valley Road. Number 3, I ask to table or vote no on Resolution 11-1442, since we have fully addressed the public safety, crop damage concerns of the council. Immediately, we will begin an effort to find permanent solution, which will use the entire ranch, still prevent livestock access to Rainbow Valley to the farmland. I believe that by working in partnership with the City of Goodyear, private farmers and landowners, the State Land Department, the Conservation District, cattle growers, BLM, we can accomplish this goal. Basically, I believe that's what was in Mr. Mohan's, what I had mentioned for him to send to you folks.
Yes, I just want to make sure that he was
Yes,
representing.
that is correct.
That Mr. Bray as well, I presume, is working on your behalf
That is correct.
with the Arizona Cattlemen's. Okay.
Any other? Councilman Gelzer, do you have any comments? Did we lose him?
Not at this time. I'll just wait till we're ready to discuss this among the council members.
Any other comments?
I have 2 more speakers.
Thank you.
Patrick Bray.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Patrick Bray. I represent the Arizona Cattle Growers Association. I live at 16577 West Lincoln Street in Goodyear, Arizona. This particular deal I know has been very frustrating for all of us, and I think that we are working towards a solution and have gotten quite a bit accomplished, in my opinion. As you look at the situation, I truly believe, and I'll let Mr. Shelton speak for himself, but I think he was well aware of the open range laws that do exist, as were some of the other farmers out there that had already chose to fence. Mr. Shelton did choose to fence some of his, and now we're at the point where we have to work on fence together, both the responsibility of the rancher and the responsibility of the farmer. Since then, we've had that agreement between Mr. Rohr, Mr. DeRozier, and Mr. Shelton to build that fence that they're referring to in that statement. Secondly, we have worked with BLM to get 8100 funds, so not only the money that he has spent to build that fence currently, but there's an additional 3 miles coming from BLM that he'll be using to fix some of that interior fence issue. As we start to drill down on the particular ordinance that you have on hand, both A and B, I would recommend that we motion to table indefinitely. I think that the particular ordinance that we have at hand does not directly deal with public safety. I think what that ordinance does is it shifts liability completely to the rancher. And I think that the citizen does have some responsibility in the roadway, just as the rancher does have responsibility. And in case law, we have responsibility. It's called an ordinary duty of care to make sure that our livestock are behind fence. In addition to that, we continue to work on these open range issues across the state of Arizona. We've worked with the railroads, the counties. In fact, they just built a finished fence down there on 283 west or just south of Mobile. We were having some issues down there. The county stepped up in that case. We've worked with the railroads. We work with the federal officials on forest and BLM all the time. And so I think as we start to address this as a public safety issue, one thing that I think is left unanswered, and I appreciate what I've heard as far as option C and the speed limit and the signs, the cattle guard is still one big outstanding issue on Bullard, and that's to finish off a pasture to make sure that those cattle can't come up that road. And I think that with time to work with landowners and some other folks that are involved, we can figure out how to pay for the cost of that cattle guard. And we're definitely willing to do that. With that, I'll take any questions that the council may have. But my recommendation is to move to table indefinitely. And I think that as you see the discussion that's going on here, this is an issue between a farmer and a rancher. We've had 3 public meetings now. I haven't heard of any public stepping forward because this is a dire issue. And so I think that it puts the council in a bad position to choose between 2 business entities. And that's why I asked to move to table indefinitely.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Bray, you mentioned that you had negotiated fencing in the Mobile area. Can you tell us about that? Because that is our city.
Mayor, Lord, Councilwoman, that particular fencing that I was referring to was outside of city limits, and it was the county that actually did that along
okay.
Highway 283.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I have a question, Mr. Bray.
Yes, Councilman Gelser.
Mr. Bray, my understanding is that many cities have a similar ordinance that have been passed already. And I guess what I would like to know is, it seems to me that, as Councilman Stipp said, we're shifting liability from the farmer who has an attractive nuisance to the cow to the rancher who actually owns the cow. And it doesn't prevent the rancher from allowing the cows to use the grange, but it does put the liability of the, when, a cow destroys the farmer's property on the appropriate party. The other question I have, and I'm just going to throw this one out to the rest of my council members, is at this point in time we have an ordinance that deals with dogs and potbelly pigs. We don't deal with horses, burros, any other domestic animal that could get out. And if a ranch, what I would call a small ranch, somebody who had horses, and the horses got out and they hit a car, there's no ordinance that prevents that from happening. But I would like Mr. Bray to answer the question of other cities' ordinances and how that affects us.
Mayor and Councilman, I'll try to answer that the best that I can. In the meeting on Friday, I did ask for a list of those cities, and the attorney and I just have not connected to get that particular list. If there's a specific city, I could try and address that, but overall, I would think that the city of Goodyear is in a unique situation because of the deep annex into Mobile. And that annexation actually went through two working allotments that run cattle today, both the Belote and the Conley allotment. And so I think that's why it puts us in such a unique position, and that's why one of the options, which was option B, was to stop the ordinance for cattle at Patterson Road, which is, I guess, somewhat of an option, but I still don't think it gets to the public safety aspect. And you can see how much we have worked and the trouble we've had just on the Belote allotment. I have not had time, and I don't think that, and I won't speak for city staff, but I don't think there's been enough time even to address what's going on with the Conley allotment and Mobile itself. So I think that the city of Goodyear is in a very unique situation because that annexation goes so far south and into two different allotments. As far as open range, and I think I'm trying to address your question even further, our current open range law is that, yes, if you have a piece of property within a working ranch, then that private property owner is responsible to fence out the cattle. Now, if there is a fence, a legal fence, which is defined by state statute, which I know that Mr. Shelton has on one of his farms, and there's another farmer that has a legal fence down there. If cattle were to cross that and cause damages, at that point in time, that landowner can hold the livestock owner responsible. I hope that answers your question, Councilman.
That does answer the question. I would again talk to my fellow council members and say, we do have a somewhat of a public safety issue for other animals, because right now we have a very limited ordinance. I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from here? Another speaker? Is that? Thank you very
Mayor.
much.
Thank you, Councilman.
The last speaker is Brandon Shelton.
Mr. Shelton?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I brought some pictures. I hope they'll work on this thing here. I want to show you.
We have staff to help if you have a problem.
Okay.
Let's bring Mr. Schmidt up if he needs some assistance.
I'd like to demonstrate some of the great cooperation I've got from the ranchers.
Eddie Guigelmo.
Okay, there's some, yeah, that's not good. I don't know if you guys can hear me. There's some of the cattle. All these pictures were taken within probably the last week. I'll just kind of flip through them here. You can see the cattle back in behind the trees. More herds of cattle. This is kind of in the area where you were talking about. More cattle. And these are all out, obviously when we drive up, you know, they run out of the fields or whatever. Let me flip back here.
Would they be going to that area for shade?
Well, when I pull up in my pickup, or whoever pulls up to take the pictures, they, you know, run off. They're not just going to let you drive up to them. So, let me show you some of the crop damage. My insurance guy estimates my crop damage at about $68,000 in the last 90 days. You can see all the tracks. Obviously, this isn't from my guys. This, you can see where they've just ate the top of the corn off. That's a whole sorghum field destroyed. What they don't eat, they usually trample, 30, 40 a night. And this field is over in between Chandler Heights and Queen Creek Road, right on the east side of Rainbow Valley Road, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at.
As you go through this, could you just point out the areas that you might have fenced off had it been completed that would prevent some of these?
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's kind of hard, but
yeah, that's kind of part of my point. This area here, what he's fencing now, which he claims I didn't, I guess, clear it fast enough so he could get it done, it wouldn't prevent none of this. This is way over, like I said, in between Chandler Heights and Queen Creek Road. This is nowhere near Riggs. They would come right down through the wash or down around Bullard, if you guys are looking at a map. Just more crop damage. Let me show you. Okay. These are my guys, my equipment, my money, once again. I agreed to help just to put it to bed. You know, I'm losing money every day, and I can't get no help out of anybody, so I agreed to help with my money, my equipment, my guys. And now I get told that I just didn't do it fast enough. So here's all the pictures of my guys clearing out his old fence line so he can get in there and go to work to prove that we were down there working. This is actually would be south of Riggs Road on the very back side where he's saying he's putting in the new fence. That's just some pictures of it after it was done. This is a fence that I installed, $27,000 or something, I think it cost.
Is that what you term a legal fence?
Yeah, that's determined in state statute as a legal fence, 4-strand barbed wire, T-posts so many feet apart, so on and so on. They give you pretty good numbers on how to build it. That's my cotton in behind my legal fence. Now here's the wreck that happened on Rainbow Valley Road, the last one that happened. There was a girl, I think she was 16 or 17. She's still picking glass out of her eye about once, twice a week. Here's some other pictures of it. That's where she was sitting right in behind here. That's the passenger seat. And to address your comment that you made last meeting about people should slow down, posted speed 45, estimated speed 45. Speed has never been a factor in any one of these wrecks. There's too many cows on the road. You can't see them at night. You know, if you have the greatest vision in the world, you can't see them. They're hard. During the day, they're shaded up. You've seen them up in the trees, and they're shaded up. They're not walking around on the road. I don't stand here before you wanting you to take the whole area out of open range or not let him range his cattle. I understand that's how he makes his money. I farm, that's how I make my money. I also ranch, that's how I make my money. But it's not right that I have to feed his cows. And since we started this back in July, and we've postponed it, every night there's cows in my field eating. And that's the cooperation that I get. You know, I mean, I would think that if he came in here and told you he was going to cooperate and go along with it, he would have gathered his cows and put them in a pen. He's got 200,000 acres to do it in, and he's only supposedly has 500 cows. So I agree with you. And when you ask the question, 200,000 acres, 500 cows, why can't you put them somewhere away from my farm, my feed? I got no problem with his cows being on the desert. I mean, even the water, I don't mind. If I got to run a well over there so they can drink, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. But it's the feed. It's the 60 grand that I'm going to lose just in this crop. All I really want is whoever owns those cattle to be responsible for the damage that they cause. I mean, that's really all that I'm after. I mean, there's lots of other things that go along with this ordinance well out of my league. But I would just like him to be held responsible for his cattle. So that's it.
I'm going to start off with a question, and then I'll turn it over to you. Did you know at the time that you leased this land about the law?
I knew that it was open range, but I knew also in 2007, I did the research and found that in 2007 it had been annexed. And it was my understanding at that time that if it was annexed, it was no longer open range. Then that's when I had the meetings, and I was told that that's only if you guys pass an ordinance prohibiting cows and such. If I would have known that, I probably wouldn't have dumped all this money into your city. I would have stayed somewhere else.
Thank you. All right, Council, it's open to you. Yes, Councilman Galvertano.
I see you're starting to fence a portion of your farm, but you said that one farm area over by Queen Creek Road, you're still getting damage.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, it's the same question I asked for the cattle industry, is there an area that can be fenced without you having to fence your whole land in that can kind of deter the cattle or make them go somewhere else?
I don't believe so. And to address that, they're not really my cattle. I don't know their habits. I mean, cattle are a creature of habit.
Well, just to block off, I didn't know if they're
Right, I
coming in
understand what
one
you're saying.
area, if there's like
Like the elk
a
crossings.
funnel, yeah, if
Like
there's
the
a
elk
funnel
crossings.
way to funnel them out.
Maybe not. I don't know. That's up to him. It's his cows. I don't know.
Councilman Stipp.
Mr. Sheldon, do you think that cooperation or continued working together between yourself and the cattlemen will just kind of put everybody in one lump group? We're going to get anywhere with that?
I just showed you where we've got since July.
Right. And obviously, as a city council, we're looking at farming versus ranching. Mm-hmm. And if this was, if you were my backyard neighbor and you had the dog that barked all night long, this would be an argument between me and you. Mm-hmm. It's really no different, just on a giant scale. So if we can put aside the issue of, well, I didn't do this fast enough and you're doing that, is there a workable solution in the future possible for this problem?
I believe so. If he has 200,000 acres and 500 cows, I believe he should be able to keep them in 200,000 acres and keep them off of my property, Tim's property, and also Angel's, the other farmers out there.
And in you knowing both industries, how would you propose that be done?
He needs to fix his fence, and he needs to ride the fence. And I mean, there's other ranchers that do it. The guy down on the Conley allotment, if there's a problem, you know, I've heard from several people that, you know, somebody would call in one of the private homes down there, oh, you got a cow in my yard. He would be right over there with a trailer, load the cow up, and leave. You know, I mean, there's responsible ranchers and there's irresponsible ranchers. And I believe I have an irresponsible rancher and not very neighborly in the fact that he knows these cows are in my field every night. He can drive through the roads and see the tracks and see all the pictures I just showed you. And he continually, every night, leaves them out there because he knows there's nothing I can do about it. I feel like you guys, and when you're talking about the prison, you can talk about till you're blue in the face, and there's nothing that you can do about it.
Okay, and you started farming this in 2007, is that correct?
No. In 2007, it was annexed by Goodyear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I started farming about roughly 6 months ago. I farm in Buckeye, also Levine, Parker, and Southern California.
Okay. So that for you, this is a 6-month-old issue?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Vasillo.
Again, I go back to, and again, I don't know your business, and I don't know the rancher business, but they're getting to your place for food and water. And again, I'd like to piggyback on Councilmember Loretano. To me, it seems like, and again, I appreciate the 200,000 acres and 500 head of cattle, but there's got to be a way that can draw them somewhere away from that area, whether you're putting some temporary water station or for some there to get water, or even dumping some things out there, even if it's a hay to kind of, you said cattle are creatures of habit. There's got to be a way to get them to go in one direction and get used to going in that one direction. That's just what my logic tells me. Again, I don't know your business, but it seems to me there's got to be a way to explore that. Even if you're putting temporary watering holes out there for them to get the water, well, they'll know that's where they need to go to, as opposed to going to the field looking for it. I still like to throw that out for somebody to figure out a solution to do that, because again, as Councilmember Stipp mentioned, your neighbors, and there's got to be a way, a workable solution, I agree, without costing you all this money for your farm. And again, I mentioned that earlier. You know, the 500 cattle, 200,000, it's not right that you got cattle rolling through there. So there's got to be a way we can work this out and get together on there. But from a patient standpoint, I know we've been working for a while, and I'd like, I kind of run out of patience as far as a liability concern, because I think I mentioned this earlier. I just got a problem with something I own going into somebody else's place, and I realize this goes back to the 20s or even before then. But there's got to be a way that both of you can work in harmony on this and get this thing working right. So,
other comments?
I have comments. I don't have any questions. Thank you. But
Mayor Osborne.
I can tell you it's not from a lack of sensitivity that I have for either one of these industries, ranching or farming. I do. However, I don't feel that it's my business to be in your business. I think that many times government tends to get into too many people's businesses, and they shouldn't be there. And I feel that, this is long, historic industries that I don't want to see stop within our city or within the state. And so I'm doing my best to not regulate those industries. What my responsibility as a Goodyear council person is to make sure that our public is safe. And that's been my issue with this all along, is that we need to have safety on this road. I've been waiting for some kind of conclusion and solution to this. I think that these ordinances bring on responsibility, but it doesn't solve the problem. And that's what I'm more interested in about, is solving the problem. You guys become the McCoys and the Hatfields, well then I'll get the Goodyear guns after you. That was when, to me, government should be stepping in. But for this road issue, that's got to be handled first and foremost. And if I can be convinced in a timely manner, and I mean, I want to have a date that says these fences will be up, these signs will be up, these type of mediations that will help eliminate any kind of accident potential, whether it's the cattle guards, whether it's, posted signs. I would be willing to do that. But if that doesn't solve our problem with cows and cars, then we're going to have to do something about this. But I don't want to get to that point. I've been waiting and waiting for that solution to come, that I can feel better about public safety. And I know we're talking about an area that doesn't have a ton of traffic, but only one accident and one death is too much. So we need to figure that out. And I've been sitting here quiet tonight hoping that we're getting there. But I don't want to be, in between your businesses. That's my opinion on it, okay?
I think what you're saying is you don't want long-term consequences that could shut down two industries.
Certainly.
And we need both of these industries, yours and the farming, your farming industry and the cattle industry. Any other comments?
I agree with Councilwoman Osborne on the public safety part of this. We have to protect the roadway. I don't want any farm worker out there at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning running into a cow, because that would be very dangerous. And that is why we took the action we did in the first place is because we've had too many accidents on Rainbow Valley Road involving livestock. And that's our concern. The fencing is just a part of it. But I don't believe our ordinance says that rancher has to fence his property. And I don't think that it's appropriate for folks to say the city is trying to shut down their ranching, because that's not what we're trying to do. We have a responsibility as a council to protect the public. And if we ignore cows on the road and people run into them, people get killed, we're liable. And as Councilwoman Osborne said, one wreck and one death is one too many. So that's the issue. The fencing is just something else. If it takes fencing to get the cows off the road, it's got to be done. I think that's all I have to say.
Real quick, the last pictures I showed you were the pictures of that wreck. Well, every morning I got 10, 12 guys drive to work, and every afternoon 10, 12 guys drive home. And I'm only one of the farms out there. I'm just as concerned about the cattle on the road. I drive down the road. My brother drives down the road. My wife drives down the road. Everybody. I'm just as concerned about that. There's been this one accident. That one accident I could take pictures of and show you. I don't want that to happen either. So what I'm trying to tell you is the fences are needed. These cattle are crossing the road to get to my feed. He's not keeping them where he should on his feed. Somehow to get into my feed, they have to cross the road. Am I angry that I'm losing all this money to feed? Yeah, but I'd be a lot more angry if my wife got in a wreck.
Councilman Stipp?
And I think Councilman Loretano had a question
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. Councilman Loretano?
Just a statement. Do you want those now, or?
Well, we're going to have discussion after
I'll just hold mine
this,
for
so-
discussion then.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a question for Mr. DeRozier, if it's appropriate to bring him up.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did how long have you been ranching out there?
Since 1969.
I want to ask you kind of the same question that I asked Mr. Sheldon. Do you believe that we've got a reasonable solution hanging out there that we can find to, keep your cattle from eating his crops?
I believe we do, but you folks got to remember, there's no one farmed out there for 20 to 25 years. We wanted to get a tax reduction, or someone did, I'm not going to mention any names, so cattle were allowed to roam freely, so to speak. Yes, there's a lot of fencing that is in critical shape. Like I mentioned, there's an external fence, which I have to keep immaculate, and trying to keep the internal. But like I said, I have the biggest yard, so I need to mow all the grass at this time. I don't feel like I'm getting any cooperation from Mr. Shelton, to be honest. If someone would come out and say, hey, I'll help you build some fence. Yes, he has a beautiful fence around his 120 acres. That's not the issue. That is not, the cattle aren't even around that area. If we would work on the other, if we could have put that effort on the 120 acres and put it maybe up where his corn crop is, the problem would be solved. I can't fix it all overnight. I don't, even with 100 people. We're almost done with this first project. When that's done, those cattle will be moved. The cattle in the area he's talking about will be moved, and I will try and do more darndest to get that area taken care of. But I'm doing it all on my own. I don't believe any of his folks have had a piece of barbed wire or a fence plier in their hand to help. That's
Other
where I'm at.
than the tear down?
And where I'm building this fence, yes. And the tear down started a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if I had cattle getting on my field, I'd get it done in a week.
Yeah, I think we can probably debate business strategies
But
probably
anyway,
all night long.
let's
Yeah.
don't get into that. But yes, that
Exactly.
will be completed Thursday, that
Okay.
area that we're talking about.
Okay, but you feel that there's a solution out there?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's all
we
I had.
need to just get together and be able to communicate. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right, I think it's time now for the city clerk to read the resolution by title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 11-1442, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk titled Amendment to Chapter 7 of the Goodyear City Code, adding Article 7-4, Animals at Large.
Thank you. And now I need a motion and a second, but we're going to have, when we do this, you have to decide on one of the exhibits, and then we can go into discussion, and we can further this if somebody wants to come up to table it or anything like that, okay? So do I hear a motion, please?
I move that we adopt Resolution 11-1442 with option B.
Do I hear a
As read.
second?
Is this Exhibit A?
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Just for discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I hear a second from Vice Mayor Osborne. So we'll open for council discussion. Councilman Stiff?
Okay, the first question that I have obviously is for the city manager. We've spent a lot of time talking tonight about the rancher's responsibility, the farmer's responsibility, the city's responsibility, and this is next. What are we proposing to do for the roadway, the safety of the roadway, et cetera?
Thank you. We're scheduled to install some signs starting tomorrow. There were 3 additional signs being put up. And we're also, as Joe mentioned earlier, undertaking a speed study, traffic counts of that area, because they haven't been done since 2008, and that will take 6 to 8 weeks.
If I look at this map correctly, and I think one of the presenters mentioned it, we have a cattle guard that is just south of Willis Road, and then the next one is not until just south of Riggs Road.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. Will any of these studies look at adding any additional cattle guards in that stretch between those two? And are they necessary?
We don't have any plans to do such a study at this time, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Pizzillo?
On the piggyback on that, is there anything that we can do besides the signs? Whether it's something on the road, whether it's something type of painting to keep the cattle from crossing the road?
We could try the installation of a virtual cattle guard at Riggs, which is the painting the stripes on the road. That would be the only option that I'm aware of, Mr. Pizzillo, Councilmember Pizzillo.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Lauritano?
Yeah, it was discussed earlier that this doesn't seem to, I mean, the ordinance doesn't really do anything. I guess my problem is it doesn't do anything to stop the problem. It doesn't do anything for the public safety. It doesn't require any fencing. It just basically shifts liability from one party under state law to another party under the city code. I have some problems, and I think I've expressed them prior with regard to the liability shifting, and it's unclear the element of proof. Do you knowingly have to let your cow? Is it a reasonable person standard? I just have some, how it's written doesn't seem very clear, and it seems like it's going to set people up to fail if and when it is passed. I also don't like the fact it just says subject to all criminal or civil penalties. It doesn't seem to give anybody any guidance on what they could be looking at if your cow is at large, and even the presumptions seem rather broad to me. And it just doesn't seem like it fits what our problem is, and that's my concern, because it's not going to stop a cow out there. It's not going to make the roadway safer. There's nothing in here that makes the roadway safer for the people driving down there to stop. I mean, that was a horrendous car accident. And there's nothing in this ordinance that is going to help stop that. I think the city, and I'm glad to hear we're taking steps, I think we need to make those affirmative steps and public safety steps so people know that there's cows out in that area. And then with regard to the crop damage, I'm a little disheartened. I've been hearing we're working together, but when both parties stand and talk to us, there's these little underpinnings back and forth. This ordinance isn't going to solve that problem either way. It's simply not going to fix the problem. We need to work together, and the city can help, I guess, effectuate that with meetings and stuff to get the parties to work together. But there seems there's got to be a way to work together to put some fencing in. Maybe the ranchers move the cattle a little bit further away. I understand that so many acres per head of cattle and the 200, it sounds like that's a lot, but obviously I understand enough that the feed needs to regenerate, regrow for the cows to move, and that's why you need so much land for what seems like so few cattle. But I think we need to take those affirmative steps, and we need to really put aside the bitterness of the past and just say, you know what, let's work together. If the cows get out, let's move those cows back into that pasture somewhere and put that fencing up where it's best utilized to kind of, I don't know, corral is the right word for cows. But it seems like for me that this ordinance doesn't require fencing, so it just says once it happens, and I still have a proof problem with this ordinance, and you can't tell this is happening at nighttime. In order to prevail under this ordinance, how are you going to prove that cow A belonged to farmer B, trampled this plant? You just can't prove that because that cow that did the trampling is going to be long gone. So I just don't think this is workable for our situation. And that's just where I'm at.
Thank you. Other comments? Vice Mayor.
Mr. Fischbach, has there been a meeting? I know we've had separate meetings with the cattle ranchers and separate meetings with the farmers. Have we facilitated a meeting where it was the city and the farmers and the cattle ranchers together? Pat?
Yes, we have. Mr. Schmitz indicates that we've had one meeting.
Was that early on?
Okay,
Yes.
so this meeting, you know, I myself am not believing in this ordinance. What I believe in is finding a solution to this problem. And you eloquently, on a legal term, stated the facts. Thank you, Ms. Loretano. But I would like to truly hear about the solutions, and I think that it's going to require this meeting again. I know you've had one, but I think it's going to take all the parties at the table together and discuss it again and find how we're going to solve this problem. Because I know that this puts responsibility from one industry onto the other, and I stated in the past that my own personal feelings is that, you know what, if it's, I'm a business owner, if it's my inventory, I take responsibility for it. But I'm not going to sit here as a government entity requiring that on some businesses, because I just don't feel that that's where I belong. But where, again, we belong is the safety of the public. And so I would prefer myself, I don't know that indefinitely tabling this is the option, but to me, I got to hear the solutions. And this ordinance doesn't do that. And so I will, at this point, unless someone convinces me otherwise, we'll be voting against it.
Any other
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Gelser?
Yes, I would like to, I've listened to the arguments and the presentations, and I thought Councilwoman Loretano's analysis of the issue, along with Vice Mayor Osborne's analysis, really says to us, maybe we should, what I would really like to see us do is table this until November, December timeframe. Give everybody a chance to work on the solution. Maybe the farmers shouldn't be farming in this area, and maybe the ranchers need to control their cattle a little bit more. We also could have the opportunity to see what the speed count, what the traffic counts are, and the speed issues on Rainbow Valley Road, and then come back with a better, an ordinance that really does solve more of the problems and not just shifts the liability from one party to the other. I don't want to see this issue go away, and I think unless we, if we schedule it in the late fall, that gives people an opportunity to work, but they also know there's, a timetable that we are going to act to do something to solve this problem. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Yes.
The only thing I would add, Madam Mayor, is that if you put it off to have us continue to work on it, we'd need at least 2 months minimum, because the speed study will take 6 to 8 weeks. And so that puts us into December. And then with the holidays and that, I would just, if you want to put it off, I would just encourage you to put it off till January 12th, which is your next meeting next year.
I also would like, I'm very interested in BLM and the partnership we talked about for a cattle crossing. So, I would really like that discussion to take place, because I know in the beginning when I suggested that, the reaction I got, no, we're not interested. But the longer we met, the more often we met, they started coming to the table and saying, yes, we think we can make this partnership work. So I think that would give us a little bit more time for them to look into the constraints that the fund might have, or other funds that they could use. Councilman,
I just had a question. You said you were going to do a speed study. From what I understand, all the accidents, speed has not been an indicator.
According to the police reports, that is correct. There's one that's a question mark.
One that's a question. Okay. So, to me, I was really more interested in traffic, how many are actually down there. Do those go hand in hand? I mean, do you not do one traffic study? I just didn't know if this was really, do we need to do speed, or is it really more about the traffic study?
Or is that done in concert?
Exactly.
It's done in concert, quite frankly, but the traffic count will tell us how many vehicles there are in a day. It won't tell us anything about how fast they're going. So we have to do that simultaneously to obtain that information.
Okay. Is there
Madam
anyone
Mayor,
else?
question?
Hold on, Gary, just a
One moment, Gary.
Is there anyone else within our city that, I know that we have the wastewater treatment facility down there. I don't know how far away. I can't visually think about how far away it is from where all these cows supposedly are. But is there someone that's continually down there that just, can staff that can say, hey, yeah, once a week I'm kind of out that way and I've seen X amount. I'd be just real curious if there's someone that's...
I can tell you that I did talk with our police chief earlier today and found out that each shift drives down that area several times per shift. But that's all the information I know right now.
So someone is actually
there are
going
city
that far?
people down, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But not to the degree they would be in our city area. Yeah, okay, all right.
I was just thinking once a week.
Hello?
Yeah. Hello? Councilman
Hello.
Gelser?
Yes. This is really for the city manager. Is there a technical way that we could install some type of a camera on a temporary basis that would be triggered by movement, and we could have date? I mean, if we can, track speeders with cameras, why can't we track cows with cameras over a week or so and see how big this problem is? And then, then the farmer is going to say, well, here's all the cows, and then we're going to show pictures and say, well, there were 3 cows that came through, and then the rancher is going to say, well, none of my cows came through, and we're going to show them the little tags on the cows. I know we have the technology to do this. The question is, can we do it cheaply and basically see what our real problem is?
We have a deer camera.
I appreciate that. This is a remote area, and we do have a problem with theft. And we even have a problem with theft on some of the fences. And anything copper, anything, you name it, anything mechanical, I can assure you, in my view, it'll be there a very short period of time, and we probably will never get a picture of a smiling cow. So I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I just don't. Gary, while I appreciate your suggestion, I checked into, because we even talked about an electronic sign being put out there. And traditionally, electronic signs, if they're not in a real populated area, they get destroyed. So that was part of our discussion when we met with them. So I guess we're at the point now where we have a motion on the table, so we're going to have to vote for this motion, one or the other, but we can make a motion then, right, to table it. I have to get this one off the dais first, right? Someone, all right. I'm sorry, Councilman Campbell.
No, start with Joe. Mr. Pizzolo, please.
Well, you guys decide which one wants to start.
I'll give it a shot. A couple things. I tend to agree with a couple of the people talked earlier that this ordinance shifts the liability. Understand that, but I still have some serious concerns. Number one, I still believe, first of all, the cattle's getting across the road, so we got obviously a safety issue. So we got to figure out a way to keep them from getting across the road, and I really feel strongly that you got to be in control of your own inventory. So if postponing it for them to get in the room to work that's fine, but I think two things we got to figure out a way of solving and getting those parties in the room to do that. First, got to keep them from crossing the street because somebody at some point, I don't want to be up here saying we could have prevented it and there's a bad accident as a result of somebody hitting a cow. I don't want anything like that to happen to anybody, okay? Especially at night, you know, I tend to ride the two-wheel, and if I hit a cow, it's going to be all over. So I don't want to see that happen. So I'd like to see them work in the room and figure out a way to get those cattle from out of the road, crossing, and then getting in the farmer's field. Because I think it's important. I mean, he shouldn't have to sit there with all this crop damage either. So hopefully we can get some harmony here. Hopefully they both can work together. But I don't want this thing dragging on either. So I want some type of very tight time limit to it. And I realize you talk about 60 days to get your study. But I don't want to go on because we've been talking about this for a while. And hopefully that this thing can kind of get worked out because I do feel strongly about, your inventory. You take care of it. Does somebody else's damage, you're responsible. So those are my comments.
Mr. Fishback, are there other signs that can have actually printing on them rather than just the picture of the cow?
Certainly.
That might be more noticeable or any reflector?
I don't know about being more noticeable, but we can do, it'll take a little time to make them, but we can do signs with the picture of the cow and underneath it say, beware of cattle or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or danger.
Yes.
We
could always put cattle look out, but I agree with Councilmember Pizzillo. But what I don't want to drag this on anymore. It came to us in July. We were kind enough to give you an extension, cattlemen, to August 22nd. You weren't ready. We gave you another extension. And I don't want to go, unless we absolutely have to, I don't want to go another 60 days because it's got to be resolved. We're going to have to do something. We cannot let those cattle get on our roadway, whatever it takes. And you can figure it out what to do to keep those cattle off the road. And to the gentleman that sent us an email about us talking about the traffic accidents, speed was not an issue. They were not speeding when they hit the cow. And I want it understood. As far as we know, with the exception of one accident, speed was not an issue. An issue was a cow was on the road, and it shouldn't have been, and it got hit. And the cows, I believe, every cow that was hit was killed. Our city has to remove the cow. That's an expense to us because it's in the city limits. It's not our fault the cow's out there wandering around, but yet we have to respond, our personnel, and expend money and time to remove the animal that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Because to me, that's a city street. You may not think it's a city street because it is way out in the middle of Rainbow Valley, and it's gorgeous out there, but it is a city street. We're responsible for that street. It belongs to this city. So I'll go along with the group, but I'm not a happy camper.
Councilman Stipp?
The whole issue comes down to the two parties, and this thing will very easily end up in a binding arbitration with us making the decision to go one way or another. I strongly encourage both parties, the farmers and the ranchers, to work this out in a very, very timely manner. We've we don't have a whole lot of options. I am concerned about our position from a liability standpoint, from as Councilwoman or Vice Mayor, I should say, Osborne said, we shouldn't be in a business of regulating what you do for your business. But for the lack of anybody else doing it, we're going to have to. So I would be in support of tabling it. I don't know if I need to amend my original motion or not.
I think we have to.
We have to vote on it,
this, and then we'll state an amendment for it.
Okay.
Councilman
Madam
Pizzillo?
Mayor, I'm sorry. Procedurally, if you want to table it, you would just make an amendment to table the motion to a later date.
I'm sorry, table
You'll
the
just make an
motion we have on
amendment
the
to- you'll
the
just
motion.
postpone to a date certain.
Okay.
That'll be a subsidiary motion
All
to
right.
the main motion.
All right.
And do I make that?
We want to discuss a date. Do you want to put on it if we're going to do this? I really want to give them a chance to finish the fence. I want to give us a chance to look into the funds for the cattle crossing. I want us to get the signs up. I mean, there's so many things that are involved in this, and bring it back to us. So I want to make sure. Now, you just have to remember, if we pass this tonight, it doesn't say there's not going to be another accident. It doesn't say the cow is not going to wander back on the road.
Exactly.
Okay? Because it doesn't say that they have to put up a fence. So, I mean, we're not really solving anything by this, except we're putting the financial onus back on the person that owns the cattle. And I thought that Councilman Loretano put it so well. How do we prove that? And since we can't use your cameras, Gary, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So just that's how.
Mayor?
And I have worked I'm responsible for delaying this because I asked you for the first time it came on to please delay it, and I'm asking you again. I really do not like us getting in the business of the farmers and the cattle ranchers. There's been a long history of this. Fortunately, this is not the gun-toting days, so it is a little bit easier. But I just don't think this is our business. Our business is safety, and I think that we're going to be taking some very concrete steps if we were allowed the time in order to get that cattle crossing and those signs up. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor?
That's what I think.
One moment, please.
I think that that is something that really needs to be laid out, is what are our expectations. I don't want to say we will table this just like we did August 22nd without any expectations that we are going to, have answered and a timeline that it will be done in. I think that's what this meeting that I'm asking that they come together and solve for us. So I think that we do need to have, they need to have a little direction from us.
Okay, well then let's give a direction, but let me, I agree with you. Councilman Gelzer.
Yes, I was going to amend the motion or make a recommendation that the city manager said the January 12th meeting was an appropriate time that would give everybody a chance to complete the studies, get the signs up, the crops might be in, and we might have some answers from all the parties. And so my recommendation would be to table this till the January 12th meeting, and then we would move forward with the ordinance on that date. If the problem isn't solved, then at least we have a liability issue that has been shifted to the appropriate party.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Councilmember Gelzer, I apologize. I gave the wrong date. January 9th is the next the meeting.
Well, that's even
the first
sooner.
meeting
That's
in
fine.
January.
January 9th is what you're saying.
That's fine. Whatever, with the correct date in January. That works. Thank you.
We need to create, you wanted certain things in this. People are saying that they want a time when the fences need to be up. You want the signs put up, a mediation take place, cattle crossing.
If I could make a suggestion, why don't we get back to you within a month with an update of how's it going, what are the agreements that we're able to negotiate with the ranchers and the farmers.
Okay.
or has the efforts completely broken down, and then we'll give status reports every couple of weeks to you to let you know how it's going.
Okay. So how do we want to make this?
Rourke?
I understood that Councilmember Gelser just made a motion to continue this to the 9th. So you look for a second.
All right.
Then you take a vote on that.
Can we still ask a question of the city manager?
You may.
Yes.
How are we going to know it's done? Who's going to go check it? Who's going to go look?
I'm assuming that the council is asking us, the staff, to do that. I would
Okay.
propose that we do that.
Because we're hearing one thing from one person and one thing from another person. So,
Yes, I understand that.
I mean, we're going to give them perimeters, and we want it done. Because if it's not done, we're going to do it for them. We're going to take care of it.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for I?
I have a
Yes.
question. If we bring this ordinance back, are we going to bring back the same ordinance, or can there be some changes in the ordinance? Because I think you're going to have some of the same problems bringing it back in January. I don't think that's going to change anything unless a new ordinance comes back with some clearer.
Can we tighten it up?
We can.
Thanks.
What I would, I guess, look for direction on is this is certainly modeled after most of the other ordinances that are out there. It's it's a pecuniary or a punitive ordinance, i.e. it's your responsibility to keep your animals on your property using whatever method you want to use. If your animal gets off, then there's a punitive measure. You're fined, much like a speeding ticket. There's no. If you go over the speed limit, you get a fine. There are some other model ordinances used by other cities in Arizona which basically prescribe fences. So that's the other type that I've seen, i.e. if you have cattle, they will be corralled. So if that's more in line what council was asking for, that's certainly something that we could take a look at and maybe incorporate that for your consideration. This ordinance was drafted with the goal of giving a cattle rancher options beyond just fencing. We didn't, we thought there might be other control methods that would allow the rancher to keep their cattle on the property beyond fencing. But we can certainly try to cast a wider net and see what other options out there. But that seems to be the two camps that these types of ordinances fall into: the typical animal at large type ordinance, or there's a fencing ordinance.
So just across the board, we can table this ordinance. It can be
But
adjusted.
if there's something you want us to look at, we certainly will take a look at that.
Okay. So we have a motion by Councilman Gelser, and we need a second.
Second.
And we have a second by Joanne, Vice Mayor Osborne. So we'll need a roll call on this.
Councilmember Campbell?
I'm sorry, there was a question. Was there a
question? If we're tabling it until January 9th?
Yes, but I will, that's the motion, but I will give you status reports as we go on.
Yes, that was.
Councilmember Gelser?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
No. Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
No.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 6-1.
To table this until
table it.
January 9th. Okay.
Miss Mayor,
Yeah, oh, did you, yes?
could you direct this? I want to direct this to John. I want more than the status report, John. I really want an action item, and with a timetable that when you present the first iteration to us, we know exactly where things are and what's expected, so that when we come down, when we get back together again in January, we have a true timeline and know who has tried to address the problem and who has shirked their responsibility, so that we can just move forward and get this issue off the table. Thank you.
I'd be happy to incorporate that, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Gelser.
Great, thank you. Any other comments to the city manager on this?
No, I agree with Gary.
All set? Do we want to do you need a break, ladies, for 5 minutes here? Can we do that? We'd like to take a break for 5 minutes. Let's say be back here, well, a little bit more in there. How about 8:20 to be back? Does that work? All right. Johnny on this. Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, now, on the business section, we will now consider an increase in the sanitation rates and fees associated with providing refuge and recycling services. Presentation by Larry Lang.
Thank you, Mayor, and once again, good evening. I will keep my comments brief. We had a work session on this very issue on August 22nd, where we went into considerably more detail than I will this evening. You will notice in front of you, we put a packet of information. These were all of the phone calls and emails that were received based on the notice that we put on our website, and those comments are available for you. The Goodyear sanitation rates are composed of two components. One is the privatized portion, which is the waste management contract, and that provides for the curbside service for both solid waste and recycling for residential customers. And the second is the city-provided services. That includes the semi-monthly bulk waste inspections and the program management. As you all know, as of July 1st of 2011, the cost for the waste management contract increased by 6%. And I want to give a very brief history on the contract and where we were before that. Prior to 2006, we were on manual collections throughout the city. It was no curbside recycling. You provided your own container, and it was picked up. Then in 2006, after a bid process, City entered into a contract with Waste Management for the curbside services. That contract was amended in 2010 which gave a decrease for a period of time, a 5% decrease, and that helped us keep the costs lower. The last rate increase that we've had, as you can see from the bottom chart, was from 2008. And it's these measures plus the measures done by the Sanitation Department in reducing the bulk trash that have kept the need for increases since that point in time. I'm going to start right off with the staff recommendation. At the last at the work session, as this was discussed, there was some concern of moving back or reducing the frequency of the bulk trash pickup. And as a result of that, what the recommendation that staff is making is that the council adopt a 3% increase in the sanitation rates, and the chart in front of you shows what those rates would go to. And then this fall, the citizen satisfaction survey will be going out, and we're proposing that we have questions in there fairly direct to this. We've had the survey in the past that have shown what you think of our program, but as I understand it, our goal is to provide wording that will link what you think of it and link it also to, are you willing to pay the extra 65 cents a month for that to keep that service at that level. But there are other options for the City Council. One would be an increase in sanitation rates of 6%, matching the waste management contract. That rate would then go from the $22.80 a month to $24.17, a $1.37 increase per month, and the additional containers would go to $6.64. Another option would be no rate increase, adjusting the frequency to once a month on the bulk trash, utilize funding from the council project fund, and increasing the container rate to $6.43 to cover the added costs passed along by Waste Management on that particular part. We talked at the work session about what other cities were doing, and this table was presented at that work session, except we added a column to tell you who is providing that service. And that was done because City Council wanted to know what variables are there. There's a wide range of costs. Our costs tend to be towards the top end. What are the variables in there? You'll notice the third column in this chart shows who the weekly provider is, and what that means is City of Avondale does it internally, Buckeye, it's Allied Waste, and so forth down the column. So you have the provider for each of them. So you'll notice the majority of these are provided by city crews, but not all. The next column is the frequency of the bulk waste collection, which is clearly a variable also in the cost. As we did these comparisons, sanitation staff also called all of the cities and a few other variables in there. 4 of the cities, 3 of which are less than us, 1 of which is higher than us, also provide commercial services and therefore have the ability possibly to blend their rates a little bit. A couple of them provide, one higher, one lower, provide or have their own landfill. And 3 of them, as you can see on this schedule, 3 of them that are lower than us have a system similar to what we tried to set up in 2009 unsuccessfully, where it was just scheduled upon request, and you'll notice that they're lower as far as the frequency goes. So some of the variables that we have talked about with other communities, the frequency of the bulk waste collection clearly is a variable that comes into play. The scheduled seems to be the less expensive of that, but not necessarily the easiest transition, as we learned a couple of years ago, and I'm sure not advocating it, I'm just communicating what we've seen. Providing commercial services in some cases allows blended rates and the ownership of landfills within there. With that, I've intentionally kept it brief. It's been a long night for you and for all of us, but the resolutions attached, very similar to the previous one. We have 3 alternative tables attached to resolution number 11-1446. Table 1 is the recommendation with staff, that staff has made, which would be a 3% increase. Table 2 would be a 6% increase. Table 3 would be a 0% increase, except a 17-cent increase in the extra container to make sure that we cover all of Waste Management's cost in that. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Yes, Councilman Pizzillo.
Hi, thanks, Larry. A quick question on the 3% increase. What percentage of your recovering Waste Management's increase?
That should cover the cash flow of Waste Management.
Waste Management. So then we would absorb our increase if we went with the 3% until we get the survey back in November. Is that what you're?
We would be able to absorb it until the survey results came back, and if depending on how it flowed through, yeah.
Okay. Quick question on the somebody had a question on the recycling. I guess when Waste Management picks up the recycling, we get a tonnage on that, a fee for that when that gets recycled. I assume it's probably built into the contract. Is that correct?
No, we don't.
The recycling, we do not.
It's been so low in quantities lately that we haven't really gotten anything from them.
But they would keep the benefit for anything that they charge.
Oh, I realize that, but I guess my question is on the initial, when we bid that, did we, because of that price at that time, because this is what, a 10-year contract?
It goes till 2019.
Okay, but it's put in place by about 3 years. Is that something we need to take a look at to see if that will help mitigate some of the fuel costs and whatever, or was that but I'm trying to figure out where did that come into play on the negotiation of the contract, because they are getting some money for that the recycling. I don't know if it's $20 a ton or.
That was all, Councilman Pizzillo. That was all part of the bid process for all of the all of the entities that bid. It was a combined package of curbside, weekly trash pickup, and recycling net of whatever revenue they would generate. So that was the way the contract.
Okay, so initially they didn't break that out for us, but they were as part of the contract. That was in the entire. Okay. Hazardous waste program. I believe Avondale does a deal with Tullison. With our waste, do we? Let me rephrase the question. Does Litchfield Park have a waste disposal, hazardous waste disposal?
We do it. We did it with them, with Litchfield Park.
Okay, so Litchfield Park's on board with our program.
Yes.
Okay, they're I assume sharing some of that cost.
Yes.
Okay, great. And again, we also talked last time, and I assume we're moving in that direction as well. We're going to shift this discussion to December, because we're going to try to move that indice, or
we're going to be trying to do that to reopen the contract. I don't know if we've had any conversations with Waste yet with regards to that.
The sanitation staff had previously indicated, and they're out of town, so I didn't get to ask.
But yes, we're going to try to do that.
I think that's a great idea. I tend to lean towards absorbing, because I don't want us to fall too far behind with the cost that waste management is passing on, but I think we can absorb the others. I tend to lean towards the 3% until we get a feedback, and whether people are willing to go to once a month or twice a month will determine whether we actually hold the line or reduce that even more. The feedback that I'm getting is unscientific among my neighbors, but they tend to lean to once a month as opposed to twice a month. They said they can get by with it. Again, it's unscientific. It's just neighbors I've talked to. I've noticed a lot of them are starting to lay out more than they have in the past. As far as some of their cuttings, they're doing more of it to cut back. But they say they'd still be willing to do once a month. So I'm curious to see what happens when we get that survey, because from my perspective, if we go to once a month, you're looking at the replacement fund will be affected because you're going to have less vehicles. You're going to bring down some of those other costs. And again, I think I mentioned it to the city manager at some point, but I know you're going to be updating the allocation model that was done a few years ago. That may have an impact on this as well. So I tend to favor the 3 because we're getting their feedback. Let us absorb our costs. You have the fund balance and a couple other things to make those changes until we find out from our survey whether the citizens want to cut it back even more to save more. Because I know, what was it, the budget committee recommended going to once a month, but I know, that has seemed to be the highest ranked service of all the services we have performed in the past. For some reason, and I'll be honest with you, I don't use it that often, but if I had to get rid of something, I'd rather wait 2 weeks and then a month to do it. So, and again, that's just, it may not be the norm for what our citizens want. That's just how I think. I think I mentioned the last meeting I have an extra container just because I like it in case you have overflow and whatever. So again, I just like the ability to have that service there. So, but I would tend to lean towards the 3 because it cuts it in half. What we were looking for, we absorb what is getting passed on, so we don't dig deeper into the hole until we find out what our customers want to do. Thank you.
Are you finished with your presentation? Because I think we need to get comments from the public before we continue on. I thought you were just asking a question. I didn't want it. You were doing so well, I didn't want to interrupt you. But
I do have a question.
I would like to open it to the public.
All right.
I do not have any speaker
Oh,
cards.
you don't? Well, thank you. That solves that. Okay. All right. Why don't we ask the city clerk to read the Oh, you have a question for his presentation. All right.
Yeah, about the presentation. Well,
All
not
right.
necessarily that one. It's more or less related to the survey. We say we're going to ask specific questions, but we're going to include it in the, I want to say annual, but the biannual citizen satisfaction survey, which only goes to a very small percentage of the households.
Approximately 500.
Yeah, about 500.
400, I think. Yes.
Yeah,
400.
It's the science. get it. It's a scientific sample, which is okay when we're, I think, when we're asking about people's satisfaction with general city services. But if we've got specific question about this issue and what is the public willing to pay, is it possible for us to do a specific, wider net survey of sanitation?
It will cost us a lot more, but Paula?
Either via the website, whatever.
A website is not scientific.
Councilmember Skip,
yeah.
even the type of question you're asking, because it's a scientific survey, it is, you can do this type of thing that way. Web is not at all. And you don't need any more. I mean, all the households in the United States, the ratings in Nielsen are based on 1,500 households in the whole United States. So you don't need a huge sample in order to get a representative sample of what you're talking about. The past 2 years that we've done this, it's shown that over 3/4 of the population does not use bulk waste more than once a month.
No.
So it's been very consistent in its usage, in its non-usage.
No, I understand that on the bulk, but the way I'm understanding the questions that we're going to tailor the survey toward is more or less what, as a resident, are you willing to pay for?
Right, and we can ask those questions exactly with this amount of people.
I guess I'm not necessarily comfortable with the scientific answer. I'd like a...
Well, last time we did this 2 years ago, we had, I forgot his name, but yeah, the expert come in that does this, and he convinced the city council at that time that the 400 sample was plenty good and that you didn't need to do any more. As you increase the sample, you increase the costs.
It's tried and true.
I get it. I mean, there's a reason that it's scientific, but I'm just...
Your confidence level will go up from 96%, say, to 97% if you add another 600 people or something like that. It takes a lot to increase the confidence level by, say, 1% of what you're going to get. And right now we're at a 95% confidence level.
So why
that
wait?
It's not a sampling error.
Yeah.
Which is the norm. That's what City of San Diego does, 400 in the entire city. City of Phoenix does more because they want 100 per district. So that's the only reason they do anymore.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Larry, a couple of questions. First of all, in the discussion, I know we somewhat hit upon this during the work session, but it's stated that the city provides sanitation services. Those services include the bulk waste, semi-monthly collections, and you have a few different things listed. But in particular, you have sanitation program management, and you have billing and account collection services. Is that what we're doing for waste management, or is this only on the bulk stuff?
No, the Vice Mayor Osborne, the billing and collection services are for the entire bill, including waste management in the city, as is the sanitation program management, to make sure people got picked up, the follow-up of it. If there's a problem with your service, you're calling the city of Goodyear, even if it was waste management's truck that picked the service up. So it is related to both sides.
Okay. You said a little bit about, I guess, the procurement, or going over when you went over the contract in 2010 with Waste Management. Did you put that out for bid with other companies, or was it only geared at going over with Waste Management, trying to come to a new contract together?
In 2006, it was publicly procured.
But in, what was it, 2010, where we just...
In 2010, what happened was there was a renegotiation of the publicly bid contract that dropped what Waste Management was charging us by 5%. It also increased the length of service on it by 3 years. But they were the only party to that. No, that wasn't bid. There was no one else that could bid that because they were under contract still.
That was the negotiation part of it.
That was a negotiation done by...
So you really didn't know then, I guess, if there were some other companies out there that could have given us a better deal because we weren't necessarily in that position?
There wouldn't have been an option because their contract ran another 6 years. They have the contract at that point.
And there's no out, I'm assuming.
I didn't bring the wording. There's a clause that says we can cancel the contract, but it's very clear in the contract. It has an intent paragraph that reads something to the effect that it is the intent of the city of Goodyear and this party that the only reason they would terminate this contract is for waste management not providing adequate service.
I see. On your chart of the different cities and who provides their service, and many of them are the city itself, what's not apparent on here, are there times where, like we have waste management, well, we know we're waste management and the city of Goodyear. Is there dual entities in some of these other cities? Because could it be, it's very hard to sit here and look at this and know that you're in that top echelon of the price, even though I know we're talking about, $1.50 or less, whatever. It's still just seeing where we are. I'm not convinced. I really don't know why we are this high. I don't know if it's on waste management side. I don't know if it's on the city side. I'm not sure where it is. And but just looking at this and then not being able to decipher, okay, does the city of Avondale, is it city of Avondale strictly, or is it city of Avondale and some other entity that does something else? Because on here it says waste management for Goodyear, and we know we're a dual entity here. I certainly, fine, you're having the survey come out and ask those questions again, but as Paula stated, we've seen it the last 2 times the surveys come out. People are not using the service. We're the only city listed here that is semi-monthly. I mean, I quite frankly don't have to wait for that survey. I would say it needs to change now because it's a waste. It's a waste of the money. It's a waste of the, it's just silly. I do not feel comfortable moving forward with this, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Any more discussion on his, on Mr. Lane? Yes.
I have one question, please.
All right. Councilman.
I just have discussion in general. Should I wait?
I think you should wait until we do the motion. I think that's best. Okay. Is yours something?
Yes. My question is the 3% increase that is before us is based on what is written into that contract. Is that correct?
The contract actually increased by 6% July 1st. The 3% before you would basically, with Councilman Pasillo's question as I asked it, would cover that part, or close to cover. I hope you'll accept it as a close. I didn't mean it right precise, but will generally cover that portion of the contract. But it was a 6% increase on that contract that we paid about $3.6 million last year.
And it automatically goes in.
That is correct.
And there's nothing we can do to stop that.
That is correct.
For the next 10 years.
And this year, the fuel escalator, what's going to happen to diesel prices? If they remain constant today, next year's just on the diesel fuel will go up, I believe it's $1.25, just for the diesel fuel. It's gone up that much.
And this increases every single year?
It changes. In theory, it could go down.
Okay.
If diesel fuel prices went down, or if the inflation index that's used in this contract went down.
That's the consumer price index you're talking about.
That is correct.
Okay. I think we ought to go on and let's go ahead and have the clerk read the ordinance, and I think then we can ask some more questions and have more discussion because we're kind of, I think, getting into that part. So I think we ought to do this. So would the city clerk please read the ordinance by title only?
Adopt Resolution 11-1446, increasing sanitation rates and fees associated with providing refuse and recycling services to the City of Goodyear and providing for an effective date.
Could I hear a motion, please, and a second?
Does the motion have to be A specific, because there was, 3 recommendations there?
Probably should be. I mean, you could always amend that later after discussion to change to one of the different tables.
Well, I would like to make a motion that it's the first option of only 3% until we get.
That's
get
table
additional-
one. Is that correct? Table one? Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
All right, thank you. I've heard a motion by Councilman Pizzillo for table one and second by Councilwoman Loretano. Council discussion? Councilman Stipp?
Everyone's looking down here. All right. The discussion, I guess. I am not happy that we are at the top of this scale. I think it was mentioned earlier. I realize we're offering a service that nobody else is offering, which is a semi-monthly bulk trash pickup. What I'm very concerned about is that being a resident of the city of Goodyear is becoming more and more expensive as we roll down. Tax increase, sales tax increase, and I realize we've tried to make some leeway on the food tax, but now we're talking about passing this fee on. I think there are things that we can do within our current operation that will help us either absorb this or do anything we can not to pass this on to the residents. I realize it's $1.60, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. But several months ago, we sat here and had a discussion about about the city employees, and they deserve a break with 2 additional days off for vacation, etc. And it didn't cost us much. It's in the same flavor, I say this. It's not a lot of money to the residents, but you know what? They deserve the break. And I'm not in favor of passing along any of it. If we need to, we don't want to do anything until the survey comes back. I'd say we don't do anything then. Or we revisit it later and move with Table 3. That's all I've got.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Gelser?
I am really, we have spent so many years trying to get enterprise funds to run as enterprise funds that I really am very concerned we are going to step backwards by not passing a rate increase that, one, because of our geography, we use a lot more fuel than some of these other cities, and the diesel fuel costs money, and we have a service. I'm just going to leave it at that. I just don't want to see us go backwards. As far as I'm concerned, I will Table 2 is my first choice. I will support Table 1. I will vote against Table 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Loretano.
Last time we talked about this at the work session, my concern was how high we were, that we were the 4th highest on the chart you provided. And I think Vice Mayor Osborne brings up a good point. We don't really know how these other cities from the chart divide their services, if it is just straight city or a city along with the other waste management, allied waste, et cetera. I'm really concerned, though, if we pass this, we're number 2, and I don't want to be number 2. I agree 100% with Councilman Stipp. I was disappointed we didn't have this. I mean, now you're talking about, well, we can expect a rate increase maybe even next year because of diesel, so I think we kind of knew this was on the horizon. I would have liked to have this before we had those budget discussions, and I would like it next year, as Councilman Pizzillo said, that so we can kind of plan for it to see where else we can maybe tweak so we don't have to pass it on. I also agree 100% with Councilman Stipp that, I don't think, and I didn't see anything in here about how we can improve our side of that equation. I remember the last time we broke out how much was, I think it was like $8 or $7 was the city side. How much of that is going into that $1 million we have? How much a month just goes into that $1 million fund we have sitting there, replacement? And then we had $50,000 for maintenance. I just don't see passing this on. I'd like to see us not even be in the top 4. I think we're going the wrong way. I think it's getting too expensive. A fee here, what is that? $1 here, $1 there. Now we're talking about real money. And we do have a lot of retirees here. We do have a lot of, the economy is struggling for everybody. And I think Councilmember Stitt brought it up. We were talking about, we gave people 4 extra days off. The council voted for that, and there was a cost there. And now we're saying, oh, by the way, we're going to raise your rates. I just would like to see the city absorb it in the waste management or our enterprise funds. We have the money there to absorb it, and then look to renegotiate this. It just doesn't seem like it's a good contract for us to be in, because it's just going to go higher and higher, and I just don't want us to go higher. So I'm not going to support any of the charts, honestly.
Can I interject something, right? Would you please tell the public, you answered Mr. Hammond's email about why we did not know about this in the budget year, that we could have made adjustments on the budget, and I think we were all concerned about that. And so
as I
Mr.
recall,
Hammond addressed you on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I recall, I indicated that, first of all, we didn't know the indices prior to, I think, was April or May. And at that time, of course, the budget is basically done, and it's gone through preliminary approval. We didn't even get the fuel index until July 1st. I mean, so that's why it was very difficult for us to foresee something like this happening. We are going to, as we've indicated, be negotiating with Waste Management to change it to a calendar year basis rather than a July 1st year basis, so that we will hopefully eliminate that problem.
Mm-hmm. I thought that we weren't notified until the June time frame, so.
I think, yes,
I think it was
correct.
June. I just like correct. You said April, and that's not my research. It said June. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So does that kind of, that sort of, I mean, that doesn't explain what you're saying. I just wanted to, make sure
I
that was clear.
I understand that. I think, though, we knew that was in the contract we signed, and if you were filling up your tank in the last year, just common sense, that should have been on our radar, and I think we missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor?
Vice Mayor.
Just wanted to, Mr. Gelser did mention something that everyone here knows. We have been trying to make the enterprise fund self-sufficient, and I agree with that. And we all know gas has gone up, and so I'm not going to argue with that. And I understand that that's why, these fees are being passed on, and we're trying to pass it on to the customer. But I'm not convinced that we can't cut, and I'm truly convinced that we can make some big changes to what the city's portion is on this, and that has to do with the bulk trash. And I understand that the survey is going to come out, and I think we need some real creative questions and flat out ask. I mean, they've already said that 77% of them are using it once a month or less. Well, you know what? If you said quarterly, what does that mean? I'm really put it on the table, because this is kind of silly, and I know that we're talking about, small potatoes here money-wise, but it's still just adding up. And so I'm not going to be supporting anything until I see some other answers coming out of this.
Councilman Pacello?
The concern I have is just to piggyback, and again, I appreciate all the feedback here, and I agree, money's money. But my concern is that we do have $1 million, reserve fund. And you can't absorb this. This is $350,000. You can absorb it, but then you're going to have $650. You can absorb it next year. You're going to have $350. The concern I have is, we can absorb it until we do the actual survey. But we got to keep in mind is those are still costs, so we're still paying it. And if we absorb those costs, we're just going to deplete the reserve fund. Now, to me, the question is the reserve fund adequately funded to replace the vehicles? And we have some pretty sizable vehicles on that bulk trash. And that's where I think some of it comes back into play when we get the survey, because if we go to once a month, your actual replacement fund will be impacted. You won't need as many vehicles, and you've got some savings as far as the trips. But when we compare us to others, you got to also keep in mind, for example, with Scottsdale, the city is 120 some odd square miles. They've got more area to go. There's going to be more fuel to burn, and we've got less people to draw the numbers from. We got 65,000 people.
They actually have more square miles than that.
No, I'm not. I'm excluding Mobile. So my point is, if you probably look at Scottsdale, I don't know what their population is, but I know it's larger than ours, and I suspect I'm not sure the square miles is as much to cover. So there's so many variables that go into this, but I agree, I don't want to be at the top piece. I can believe that, but my concern is if we're talking about an enterprise fund, we can absorb it. I don't have a problem waiting the 3 months, but my concern is, like Gelser mentioned, we got to be careful, because if we go down that road draining that fund, what's the problem's going to be down the road? We won't have money there to replace the stuff when we need it, and we'll get back to the general fund subsidies. So I agree that if people want to go to once a month or once a quarter, which are legitimate questions, there's probably a lot of money you can save. But also at the same time, we want to make sure the whole idea of bulk trash is so people don't end up dumping the stuff in the desert. So we got to kind of keep that in mind as well. So if people, we're paying for a service. Twice a month. That's the Cadillac of services. You go to once a month. Again, I've talked to my, people in my neighborhood. It doesn't seem to bother them. So maybe that's where we'll end up going. But we got to be careful about draining the reserve fund, at least from my perspective. But I can appreciate eating the cost, until that part comes. But we got to be careful, because 350, next thing you know, there is no reserve fund.
Councilman Campbell?
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree that we need to survey our citizens. I know I've surveyed my area, and they're comfortable going to once a month. I don't want another increase. I don't want to pass any more increase or taxes or anything on the people. It seems every month something else is coming up, and I know we've got to figure this out. I'm not sure we're in the best contract, but I don't know what we can do about it, unless maybe work on the bulk side. But I would like, if we ever negotiate again for any reason, I don't want to keep extending their contract out either. Because if we talk about something and they nail us 3 more years, and then it's 3 more years, then it's 3 more years. I mean, the thought that we can't do anything until 2016 just kind of, 2019, well, that's even worse. I mean, that's why I don't like anything long, because it ties our hands, and there's got to be a better way to do it. But our citizens do not want any more increase in anything, and I'm going to vote no on any increase.
Council, Vice Mayor.
I have one question of historic knowledge, if anybody can give it to me. Is there a reason why our city never went, so many of these cities do it all themselves. Is there a reason why we've never done that? I mean, obviously you have to purchase the capital and all that, but I was just curious if anybody can tell me why our city never went down that road years ago to start its own trash collection.
I can't really answer that. I don't know if Larry can. I know that I have asked Charles McDowell to do an in-depth study of what would it cost if we were to provide municipal collection. So we are doing that study right now. I don't know why we never have, though.
I think I can give a little of the history. I came about the time, I think this may have been on the street, but there was a committee, a citizens committee, that did meet on this a number of times and went through it, and I think it was part of their recommendation. The second thing was, at that point in time, we were not geared up, staff, equipment, capital, to do it at that point. And so it was put out to bid just for those portions of the service. The bulk was not included with it to allow more flexibility, so you can do what you did do in 2009, which was change the frequency from weekly to semi-monthly.
So a follow-up to that, I noticed that within here, I guess by 2019, we will own all the trash cans. Is that?
Actually, 2016 will own and be responsible for them. I did misspeak at our last meeting a little bit. That's when they go off warranty. I had assumed that that was when they would, that was the end of their useful life. That's not true. So I was worried about a capital requirement. The sanitation fund brought us some cash flow estimates that alleviated those concerns considerably. I was worried that we might be in for $1 million up front, and it doesn't look like that's a realistic assumption.
All right, then I guess I'll speak. I am concerned that adding, not increasing in some direction is going to impact the enterprise fund. And I remember the first year I was on council when it was noted that the north side was helping sustain the south side bills, their utility bills. And I just didn't think that was quite fair, and then we were just taking it out of the general fund, and we just were supplementing them with that. And I've always believed you pay for what you use. That's a responsible thing to do. If I go in the store and I buy 10 oranges, I pay for 10 oranges. Okay? So I've always been a firm believer in that. So I am somewhat concerned about that, and I agree with you. We need to keep some of those assets there to be able to replenish the system. And at the same time, I understand everybody being very sympathetic and, of course, understandably so, to the increases to people and their budgets. I understand that we get letters all the time on that, especially from my neighborhood. And I think it's the same neighborhood you come from. But I tell you what worries me. So we go to Table 1, the 3%. So then we do the survey. So the survey comes back. Okay, we want twice a month. So now what do? Raise it back up to the, I'm really not sure I want to flip this back and forth, so I'm very concerned about that. Because I can tell you, when we agreed to lower the property tax for 1 year to $1.42 from $1.60, our bloggers, our complainers, and other people, short-term memory, all of a sudden, what are they doing raising our property tax? So I don't have confidence in a number of people that they're going to remember what we're saying here. So I'm concerned. Now I don't know. I think some of the questions they've asked us, are there areas that we can reduce? But remembering, at least in my mind, you reduce a service. So maybe in this, we need to survey, we need more questions. Maybe we need to say, okay, should we go back and do away with the hazardous waste event? There's one. Let me see, electronic waste disposal. Eliminate that. Christmas tree recycling. Eliminate that. Find out. I think you just have to ask more questions. If you're going to cut back on the system, you need to know. Now, on an operating sense, we can't answer that. You do. You, the city manager, you know what we pay for certain things and the employees and everything that's connected with that. That's for you to look at and maybe come back. So, I'm torn here because, for me, what does Georgia Lord like? I prefer Table 2. But I'm not getting that from everybody here, nor am I getting that from some of the other residents. But I'm surprised I didn't get more letters in opposition. We just didn't get them. And I pleaded to the people. It was in the newspaper. Hey, call in, send emails, tell me how you feel. Really, we've hardly gotten any comments. But I do want to bring this up because I thought this was a good point. And if I'm missing something, let me know. This talks about the bulk pickup. It says our regular pickups are day 1 and 3 on Mondays. This year there were 4 holidays on Monday where there was no pickup until the next regular scheduled date. One of the 26 Mondays throughout the year, that amounts to no pickups for 15% of the time. Residents who have pickup schedules on the days other than Mondays do not have this situation. But we, on a particular side of a community, still pay the same fee as others. This amount seems to be an unfair assessment. An adjustment should be made to compensate for this discrepancy. I thought that sort of made sense. So as we're analyzing and looking at this, if this is correct, I think we need to look at that because they are being shortchanged for their money. So I'm not telling you what neighborhood, and I will give this to your staff or the person's name.
I have that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, because I did not call to get permission if I could do that, so I'm not going to do that, but I'd like to bring that point up. So it's getting back to what we have to vote on tonight, and for me, this is very, very hard.
Madam Mayor, if I could, just for a moment,
Yes,
please.
yes.
Hearing where the council is right now, I'd like to suggest that we just eat this for the next 3 months, because we're doing the survey.
All right.
That'll be roughly $70,000 that we'll have to eat for the 3 months. And meanwhile, we can do some further studies and also do the survey of the citizens and come back to you. Remembering, this has not been increased since 2008. I mean, I just want to point that out again. So every nut has been screwed down on this, quite frankly. And, of course, there's been no wage increases or anything else, or the rates would be going up a lot higher. But we can certainly do that, and so I would just recommend that it be put off for 3 months.
Thank you. I would like some of these questions answered. When they talk about, and they've asked it several times, how do the other cities do it? Can we look at a city that's closer to the number of square miles that our city has? Can we kind of pinpoint that? We have several cities I think we could call and really define that. I think that would be good for the public and for the council. So if we could do that, and
certainly we could.
And when you say that we have taken, we've lowered costs and benefits and so forth, let's put that part of the presentation so they know in that department what we have done as far as reductions in there that benefit the citizen, and that would help. So, yes.
Just one quick comment. I know sometimes when we get our survey going, sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for, and the reason why I say that is I agree we have Christmas tree recycling and we have hazardous waste and we have some other services that you mentioned. My question is if we would cut those services, because people say, well, I can do without it, where will those Christmas trees end up? Where that hazardous waste end up? Will they be, flushing it down the toilet? Will they be throwing into the regular waste? Or will the Christmas trees be out there in the desert somewhere? So, some of these things I think we do for the better good of the community as well. So I think it's important that we take all that into consideration when you kind of go through this. But again, I can 70,000. I don't think with our replacement fund, putting that off is going to hurt us. But my biggest concern, long term, at some point, we either got to take another look at the replacement fund to make sure that it's adequately funded. As a result, you mentioned with the containers, maybe there's a little less money that's needed in there as you go through there, some of the overhead. But in my view, what you don't want to do is keep draining that fund so you don't have the money there to do the replacement when you need it. And that was always my contention when I first got on the council with our regular equipment replacement fund, and that's why I'm a staunch supporter of setting that money aside so you don't have to tap something else for it. So with that, I'm with you all on the 70, but I think it's still an issue we're going to have to address.
I have a question. Do all the other cities base it on the consumer price index?
I don't know.
I think that's
the only ones that would be the ones that contract their service.
If they're city
Internally,
operated,
it would not be. It would be actual cost.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Madam Mayor, Wally Wanda.
I'd like to ask the city manager a question, please. If we do go to one bulk pickup per month, will it cause our city to lay off employees?
Yes, it would.
Yikes. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so now we have to amend our motion. Is that what we're going to do?
Your amendment would be a motion to postpone.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Motion to postpone.
Okay.
You can leave the date open if it's just after the survey.
Okay.
So just make a motion to postpone this item until
Yes.
after the citizen
All
survey
right.
is conducted.
Do I hear a motion to postpone this until after the survey?
So moved.
I hear a motion by Vice Mayor Osborne. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Campbell. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer.
Nay.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 6-1.
Thank you. Now we're on to information items. Does council have any comments, commendations, reports, or current events?
I do.
You're all tired? Oh, you do? All right.
I do.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, well, I did appreciate the presentation by the fire union and the fire department. That was a great event. And, also something I thought about was that so many people wanted to be able to kind of go and have a memorial. And they didn't necessarily, unless they were going to church, this gave them a place to go. And I thought that was really cool. I also attended the chamber had a memorial on the same day, and that was a very nice event. I did attend the Westmark board meeting, and I really would like to thank Westmark for stepping up to the plate and helping support our opposition for the prison. And I attended the Buckeye Advisory Council on Education, had a tourism meeting with my chamber board, and I'm kind of excited because in attendance was a person from the State Tourism Board, and they are getting NAU and ASU to bid on doing a study for the Southwest Valley on tourism, and where is money being spent, who's spending it, things like that. So that's going to be, I think, some very useful information we'll get within the next year. And we had a great week with the league, obviously, and had a wonderful half-day leadership on public engagement. And, then I went to the Diamondbacks game with the Blue Star Moms yesterday, and we lost by 1.
Oh. That was it. Are you making a motion?
No, I was just going to.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Is this when you want us to do comments to the city manager, or
Sure.
just everything at once?
No, we can do everything at once, right? There's no protocol on this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I attended the League of Cities. It was excellent. There was a lot of good information there. The 911 memorial, we talked about that. That was absolutely wonderful. And I spoke to the Arizona Association of University Women. I did want to thank our police chief. We had a couple incidents up in Estrella, and one was a attempted abduction, and I want to thank the chief for stepping up patrols around the schools and really taking, because it really upset a lot of parents, and they were quick to respond, and he's offered to come speak to our local Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts and get kind of the message of stranger danger. So I really do appreciate the chief for stepping up for that. And a lot of people don't realize, that that's a problem, and you've heard it on the news, and we had one here locally, so I just quick action, and thank you. I did want to get some, I did have a question for the city manager. I noticed that we were going to start the sign program for the business on the kiosk signs.
Okay.
Which I think is good. I guess I was a little concerned that we were going to charge them more than just like the cost of the sign, like a monthly fee. And I didn't know if that was really necessary. I guess I thought it was going to be like free.
I can get you the figure. I don't recall the figures exactly, but that's a major revenue producer for the city. And I can get you those figures and what it produces currently for the rental of those spaces.
Okay, I just thought what I was under the impression of when we talked about it is we had extra space that we weren't going to use, and we were just going to kind of let the business community use those as kind of a boost in these hard economic times. That's what I was under the impression, and I just don't like the fact that we're charging them monthly. So at $75 a month, that's almost $1,000 for a very small business, and I just don't know if that's what we were looking for. So
I'll take a look at that and let you know.
Okay, and then the only other thing, I would like to get some figures, if we could figure out what it does cost to start a small business in Goodyear. What are some of those startup costs compared to other cities, so we can kind of look at those and see how we can keep ourselves to be,
So do we want to term a size of a business?
Like small business.
Small
My
business
mom
is
and-
500 and below. So what I'm saying is, let's target in on something. If you're talking about a small business, do you mean
Some of those
a
mom and pop
mom and
businesses that
So
we
you want
see we're
something between
losing.
1 and 10 employees.
Yeah, that we
How's
seem to
that?
be losing some of those.
All right. Excuse
Certainly.
me, City Manager, then between 1 and 10 employees, because that helps, because I have a bone of contention with this small business. You know, I don't think 300 and 500 is
I think
small
that's a large business,
I think it's a
personally,
large
but-
business, and I don't like the way it's separated, so.
Yeah,
that's a
I
good
just
idea.
liked, because that seems to be the ones that would be using the kiosk signs, and that's who I think we should target. So if we could see what the costs are, maybe we could help it if a small business wanted to use those signs rather than a larger business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I've often talked about, and since you're talking about that, I'll just interject this, that, you know, remember during the downtimes I said, is there some kind of program we can come up with that would help them in some way? And it's very much similar to what you're talking about, so I appreciate that. Councilman Pizzillo?
Just real quick, I want to thank the fire department. I had a chance to use your services last night. My fire alarm went off at 1:30 in the morning, and so we got about, and then it ran for about 5 minutes. Then it went off. Then they called them out just to make sure. They checked to make sure there wasn't a fire. And then as soon as we went back to bed, an hour later, it went off again. So if I'm a little punchy, it's about an hour's sleep last night. But I didn't realize, and it was very educational, that those things have a shelf life. You know, I've been at home about 9 years. They said 5 to 10 years, those things actually start, acting up. So I didn't even realize that. Fortunately, I think I've got the one that's bad, which I unplugged. So I've got to get that replaced. But no, I appreciate it. They came. It was quick. They checked it out with the cameras, make sure there was no heat sources up in the attic or whatever, and great service. So thank you, guys.
Nothing? All right. Yeah. Did you find them? I want to know that. False alarm? Well, you know, I didn't write down everything. I have to tell you, it's been such a busy week, but some of the highlights. One of them was on a Saturday night I attended, I think it was, Saturday night I attended a 9/11 service at the Palm Valley Church. And I just want to bring this to your attention, because remember we had it come before us whether we would convert this supermarket into a church. Well, this church has a membership of 4,300. And what's more important, it has a huge youth program. So it's a great resource for the teenagers, and they're getting children in there and teenagers, and the parents aren't attending, you know. So it's really keeping the children off the street in a very constructive way. So it was a very rewarding service, and I really enjoyed it. And then of course I attended two on, just as everybody else did, on Sunday, which eliminated my church, so I didn't attend my church. But week's been interesting. I had to go to the Foothills High School and talk to a government class, and that was a high school class, and that was very stimulating. I also had young people come in to talk about government in the office. I had lots of meetings about the cattle and the cows. So it truly has been a busy week. I attended GPEC and other meetings and supposedly spoke at 2 golf tournaments, but I didn't speak today because I was late because of having to be on a tour of some companies that are looking at our city. So it's been a busy week. I want to thank the council tonight. I just want to thank your conversation. I want to thank you for your decision-making. You should be proud of yourself. We've given more work to you, city manager, but, right? That's
what we're here
keeps your
for.
complexion so good, say, because of that. So I appreciate that. So, yeah, and helps to continue that gray hair. So now it's to you, city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I just wanted to give you a brief report on what the city has been doing with regards to the prison opposition, so that the public can benefit from this. We did do
And be
the
sure you talk closely into the microphone. I want everybody that's not here, that's gone home, that's on their computers to hear this.
Thank you. We did send the letter from Mayor Lord to different people stating clearly the city's opposition. That letter went to Governor Brewer, Director Charles Ryan, Speaker of the House Andy Tobin, Senate President Russell Pierce, Representatives Steve Montenegro and Jerry Wires, Senator John Nelson, and County Supervisor Max Wilson. We have been working with the companies in our area, and just to name a few, we have had the following companies state their clear opposition to the governor's office and the director of prisons. To date, Duncan Farms, Sunbelt Holdings, Sub-Zero, DMB Associates, Valley Partnership, and many, many others have been sending their objections to the director of corrections. Westmark Executive Committee, they did officially oppose the prison, and they've done an official letter to the DOC director, and they've also issued a press release, and an article was written in the Arizona Republic covering Westmark's opposition. Fourth is the Southwest Chamber of Commerce is also taking a position, and a letter was drafted and is being sent to Director Ryan from the Chamber of Commerce stating the official opposition. Mayor Schoaf from Litchfield Park has sent out a letter to Ed Robeson of Robeson Communities stating his shared concerns. The letter was copied to the governor and to the Director of Corrections, and the City of Litchfield Park has passed a resolution similar to the one that we passed, stating opposition. Sixth, the mayor has spoken directly with Director Ryan. As you know, the governor is not taking phone calls on this particular issue, hiding behind, I don't mean this derogatorily,
No.
Hiding behind the RFP process.
The process, and that's what people, I think, sometimes forgot in our case, too. There was a process and a time that one could express their feelings, and so I think we were all within that time limit. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Senator Nelson has submitted his own My Turn to the paper, and it was published in the Arizona Republic. An article was included in the In Focus, and it has gone out to all citizens. Max Wilson has issued a letter of opposition. We are working with GPEC and getting them to state their opposition, and all interested parties are within the business community are being notified by GPEC. New items recently that have happened. We've been in constant contact with Representative Jerry Wires and Representative Montenegro. Wires has spoken with Director Ryan, clearly stating his concerns. Representative Montenegro has reached out to the governor's office. Speaker Tobin has as well spoken to Director Ryan, and he has received the same feedback from the governor's office that we have. In addition, an official letter will be sent from his office to all of the interested parties. The Representative Montenegro also has contacted the GEO Group to let them know, the GEO Group lobbyist, to let them know the concerns that everybody has with regards to their proposal. We've spoken to Senator Nelson almost daily. His efforts have been extensive and appreciated. He has called the governor's office numerous times. The State Land Department Director, Director Charles Ryan of the Department of Corrections, the school districts, Westmark, Candace Wiest, Chairman of Westmark and the Commerce Authority Board member, Mayors Barrett, Meck, and Schoaf have all expressed their opposition, and Senator Nelson has also issued letters and is researching any possible legislative solutions that may be available to the city. We really appreciate everything Senator Nelson is doing on behalf of our city. We've also coordinated efforts with Michelle Ryder from Westmark on their outreach to stakeholders and the business community members, legislators, and other interested parties. We've been in communication with all of the Department of Corrections staff. They are receiving all of the letters that our citizens are generating, and we sincerely appreciate all of that. We have spoken also with the Arizona Capital Times, which is the legislative political insider paper, and the reporter there who is doing a story on private prisons and the opposition from Goodyear to Perryville's expansion. And then finally, late this afternoon, we received an article indicating that the American Friends Service Committee has notified the Attorney General that they will be filing suit intended to keep the Director of Corrections from awarding contracts to build private prisons to house the 5,000 inmates until the state completes the required cost-benefit analysis, which is due and has not been done. And that is something that they are pursuing with the legal process. That's my update this evening for you, Madam Mayor. And
I will just add one more. I want you to know that Representative Chad Campbell very early on went to the governor's office and asked her to please delay this decision because they were paying for this study, and at least wait till the study came in of the private prisons and if they are beneficiary, if it does cost less, whatever, you know, the pros and cons. The other one I'd like to add too is that I did approach my GPEC ambassador group, and we are they have already, a number of them, sent letters on to the Department of Corrections. So I just wanted to add that. Is there any staff summary that is going to be required?
we'll follow up on the two items that we've deferred.
Okay. Staff, council, any more inquiries? Okay, with that, we're going to close this meeting. The next council meeting will be September 26th.
Goodbye.